The news is exciting. A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms will be coming to HBO, and even though it'll be a few minutes before the show actually gets made, this calls for a dedicated discussion, heavy on imagination, but anchored within the framework of The Hedge Knight, aka the first novella featuring Dunk and Egg. The title of this podcast episode is Dreams of Dunk and Egg, and it has a many-tiered meaning. We shall be dreaming of how this series will manifest on TV, as well as dreaming how the dreams within the story will manifest, and in turn we shall dream on those dreams. Ha, yes. It's Dreamception. Yes, that's right. Dreams are, of course, a big part of the Dunk and Egg series. Arguably bigger than in other eras, which is interesting because it's a dragonless era, of which Maester Aemon, Egg's older brother, very important, will say much later during A Song of Ice and Fire, quote,
I see them in my dreams, Sam. I see a red star bleeding in the sky. I still remember red. I see their shadows on the snow, hear the crack of leathern wings, feel their hot breath. My brothers dreamed of dragons too, and the dreams killed them. Everyone.
Everyone, he says. Daron the Drunkard, Aerion Brightflame, and Egg, a.k.a. Aegon the Unlikely, Aegon the Fifth. Clearly a major element, dreams here. But also, House of the Dragon has added Aegon the First's dreams to the fold, which then have passed down, sort of. And it seems likely those threads will connect a bit or a lot. Probably not all at once, of course, but over the course of the series that, R'hllor willing, will run for several seasons. That is a lot for us to talk about, and we've brought on a guest to help with all that and more on this episode of History of Westeros podcast. Hello and welcome! Yes, we're back. We've got fun stuff to talk about today, of course. The Hedge Knight's big, exciting news. And Joe Magician's here. How's it going, Joe Magician? This is now, what do we count? This is your 8th time on? We had looked the other day, and
eight? I don't know. You're talking about the other day. It was like, yeah. Didn't I almost get it right, Ashaya? Wasn't that the thing? I accidentally guessed it.
That's kind of why I'm saying 8, because I thought you guessed 7 and got it right. So, but maybe I'm just remembering.
Nailed it. Although that includes CK, Crusader Kings III, which, do they count? Maybe yes and no.
Maybe half. They sort of count. They're longer, but they're not. Yeah, anyway. We'll spare a few moments for some CK3 discussion halfway through this episode for those of you who have been catching the streams or are interested in the game. Sean, how are you doing today? You got a drink? We're wearing nearly the same shirt. Same shirt, different colors, right?
Ooh.
We both have a Hedge Knight shirt on with the shooting star and the tree.
I've got a Rohan Weber shirt.
Yeah,
you're muted, Shay.
Thanks, Sean. I have a Rohan Weber shirt on.
Hey, Rohan Weber, represent.
And I was going to I have a Dunk in the Tall hat, but it was too bulky with my headphones. So.
Yes.
I've got my Dunk cup, but It's too dirty to drink out of. I don't want to throw up halfway through the stream, so we're not doing that.
It's a Dun cup.
Yeah.
I've got my usual coffee and water, not tomato juice today, so no blood. It's not as bloody of an episode.
Wait, you drink tomato juice on stream?
A lot lately.
Lately.
What?
Lately.
I'm a weirdo.
Lately.
My drink is
only lately.
Only lately.
I have a protein berry drink mixed with Mountain Dew, mixed with sparkling ice, mixed with what is it? Nectarine Red Bull. I found out Bang, by the way. That's my usual energy drink mix, Matt. But they got sued for false advertisement. They were saying that they had creatine in their drinks, and they don't. And Monster's like, we do. You can't say that, and I haven't sued them. And they had to pull it all off the shelf because it says on the can that it has creatine. So that's why you can't find it in the store right now, because they had to pull them from the shelf due to false advertising.
So once they edit the cans, they'll be back, I suppose.
Yeah. Hopefully.
That's a red bankrupt. Red can.
Bankrupt.
Got it.
Nice.
But Monster's ridiculous about that stuff. They sue everybody that has the word monster anywhere in their product. They're ridiculous. Monster, knock it off.
They are a litigious organization, aren't they? But don't sue us. Yeah. So
they might now. We said the word monster. We're on the hit list.
Dang it. We meant Munster, like the cheese or the character, Eddie. Yeah. So this episode was voted on by patrons. We had a Joe Magician certified poll.
Did he really certify
I saw
it?
the list. I was like, Aziz, did you just like list my most viewed videos on my YouTube channel? It's like that topic, that topic, that topic.
Pretty much. Yeah. So that's awesome. We like to talk about stuff that we're all the most into. That's a nice bonus for us today. Next week we're off for Ice and Fire Con, and when we come back we'll have a fresh schedule for the next several weeks. We've got some cool stuff planned, but we're going to keep that close to the chest for the moment. Keep you all in the dark for once. We often let you know what's coming, but not this time. If the episode ends and you want to stay immersed, we've got you covered with suggestions for topics related to this one. The list is particularly long this time. Dunkin' Egg is, of course, being one of the things that George has written directly and spent a lot of time on, and it's right in the middle in terms of the timeline. It's like 90 years before a Game of Thrones, or maybe like 80, about 90, and about 80, 90 years after the Dance of the Dragons. So it's almost exactly between the two main entities that have been developed in Westeros so far. So that's pretty cool. So of course it has a lot of attachments and tie-ins to other topics and things like that. And that'll be at the end of the episode. So will the answer to this trivia question, which is how we'll start, as we so often do. During the first Blackfire Rebellion, Fireball, Quentin Ball, fought the sons of Lady Penrose, killing all but the youngest, whom he spared. A similar event occurs during a Feast for Crows, where one man slays 7 out of 9 sons in duels. Who was this man? And bonus, what house suffered those defeats? Hint, the victor, wields Valyrian steel. No, his name is not Victor. He was the winner.
Are there victors in the Song of Ice and Fire? I think that name is lacking.
Maybe
Victarion.
His name. I see. Yeah.
Damn him.
No, there is that guy.
He's
Victor.
Always the answer.
There was a Victor in at the Red Keep. I think during the Secret Siege. I think in that era there was a guy named Victor, like a Victor Tyrell or a Victor something like that. I was surprised to see it. I was like, Victor. I think that's the first.
There is a Sir Victor Tyrell, a distant cousin of Lord Mace. There's also a Victor Valarian.
There we go.
Fire and Blood. So there's 2
nice.
Victors.
That's probably what I'm thinking of.
With the C, though, for what it's worth.
It's a very Stan Lee name, Victor Valarian.
Yeah, Victor Valarian. Very rolls off the tongue. Yes.
My mind went to Victor Crumb. I was like, no, that's Harry Potter.
No wonder I was like, Victor Drum? I was like, what am I?
Oh, Drum. Okay, yes.
That'd be a good one, yeah.
So let's start off with what we know about the show. Out of the possible successor shows, they chose the option that is the most rooted in already written material. So that's a good thing. That's always been a huge edge for this option that is now a reality that it had over the others. I mean, the Sea Snake, Nymeria, these are all awesome things. We want to see those. But George hasn't developed those like he's developed this. So this is just starting on a lot more solid footing. Everything we know as far as basic details, it's confirmed. So far, 1 season, 6 episodes, quote unquote, most likely, per George. So that isn't set in stone, but that seems good. And folks, I want to get your reaction on that right away. 6 episodes, on one hand, you could say that's kind of short. But, by the way, Sean, you were right. You said it was about a 150-page book, and I was like, no, it's closer to 300. If it's paperback, it is a lot more. But the hardcover is 160, so you were like almost right on there, which makes this point even stronger. Hey, I was wrong, but this makes this point even stronger. Is that Game of Thrones 10 episodes season 1, House of Dragon 10 episodes season 1. They covered like 25 years in House of the Dragon season 1. In Game of Thrones they covered 900 pages in 10 episodes, whereas this is right. They've got. Do the math. Well, don't do the math. It's a lot more screen time per page, right? So that's awesome. So they can really take their time. They can pace it out. They can slow things down, which sounds great. Like, it's a different look. We want a variety of types of shows. We want different approaches. We want different styles. Joe Magician, I'll throw it over to you first. What is this? How does this hit you?
Well, 6 episodes actually sounds like a kind of a lot for the Hedge Knight, because a lot of it is Dunk's internal monologue.
Yeah.
Like, in terms of what's actually happening, there's not a lot going on there. It's like 1-2 days. Is that how much it covers?
I think it's a little longer,
like that.
But most of it happens in 2 days because technically Dunk ends up sitting there for a while after Baelor's killed. There's like time going back and forth, so to the end actually is like a multiple weeks. But almost 99% of the story, you're right, is in like 2 or 3 days.
Yeah. So you could sell me on the idea that you could do the Hedge Knight in like 3 or 4 like Game of Thrones-ish long episodes or something like that. Going to 6 probably tells me that they're planning to retcon a lot of stuff, that they're planning to put in a lot more of stuff around the periphery, maybe not just focus on Dunk. Like maybe show us different parts of the royal court, show us maybe parts of what's going on maybe with King Daron, other characters that show up, maybe even multi POV. Like this is like you really need to kind of pack it a little bit to get the Hedge Knight into 6 Game of Thrones style episodes, even if a lot of it is like Dunk doing the actions he literally does go through. I mean, how like you're really gonna put like 10 minutes on screen of Dunk just sitting there on a horse thinking about Arlen? No, it's like
they're gonna have conversations.
There's gonna have to be more going on.
But you might have a 10-minute flashback scene of actual interaction between Dunk and Arlen.
Yeah,
so
I have some thoughts
on
of flashbacks.
Later that could happen.
Yeah, lots of, you're right. Flashbacks, I think this is one show that might do that. There's a lot of reasons to do that, especially in like if you think about the Sworn Sword. Like Eustace telling the stories of the Blackfire Rebellion, is he just really going to just tell that? Sure. Like that is a golden opportunity for flashbacks, at least to maybe those vague flashbacks where you get this battle sounds and there's like maybe it's not as specific, it's kind of hazy, but yeah, that's a golden opportunity. What do you think, Ashaya?
About
this the fact that we have so much space, that 6 episodes, is that how does that land with you?
I mean, I completely agree that there will be flashbacks ultimately.
Oh, okay, cool.
That's what I think. I feel like I'm just agreeing with everything you said.
Okay.
I don't have any new thoughts.
Nailed it. Also, we know that the story could be told in an hour and a half because A Knight's Tale exists, which is basically the Hedge Knight.
Right on. So it is confirmed to be live action, not animated. We have a couple of details about behind the scenes. Not much. The main writer is Ira Parker, who did write for House of the Dragon. Their main credit is for episode 4. They're the main writer for that one, which is King of the Narrow Sea.
Notably, they worked on Better Things. To Sean and I, very notable because it's one of the best shows out on TV.
It's one of the better things.
Yeah, one of the better things on TV is Better Things, which is the Pamela Adlon slice of life show. So really, also just very much like the kind of show that lets its characters breathe and live. And it is a show that if someone has that under their belt, I feel good about them as a creator.
Yeah, you're right. That show really does space things out a lot. It really does have nice pacing and time to...
It's not as plot-centric. It's just showing you moments of life. And over a series of episodes, there are some quote-unquote plots unfold, but it's not as much about what's going to happen next week as how do I feel about these things that are happening,
Yeah, and that does seem like more about Dunk. I mean, there's obviously, it does have a narrative, and there's a distinct beginning, middle, and end to the story. But especially if you add in what Joe Magician's saying here about adding more POVs, potentially showing other locations, which I tend to agree with, flashbacks potentially as well, then you can see where some of that space will be filled in. Also, notably about the episode Ira Parker wrote for House of the Dragon, that's the episode with the closest look at the common folk. That's the episode where we have the puppet show, or not the puppet show, but the play that Rhaenyra is in disguise watching and booing because they're talking crap about her and all that. And they're in the brothel and all these other, like, out on the street. So that was kind of cool. The way they filmed that was really neat. So we might get some more of that vibe.
It would be so fun. I mean, they would never do it. They would never, ever, ever do something like this. But if they want to get real zany with it, like we have the puppet show, in Dunk and Egg. Can you imagine if they did like a whole huge extended sequence or episode like as the puppets? Like anyone who knows me knows I'm a huge fan of puppets, and so like they actually could go like pretty hard with the puppetry like aspect. Like I'm picturing like. In the Dark Crystal, they had a puppet show within the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance, where like it was gorgeous, and like I don't know, they could really film that Tencel's puppets very well, actually.
So, folks, as we're going through this, type in the chat or let us know. You can, if you're listening to this later or watching this later, what you're most looking forward to and seeing on screen. anything directly from the Hedge Knight doesn't have to be from the Hedge Knight. You can bring up things from the Sworn Sword or the Mystery Knight, or things that you think they're going to put in that aren't necessarily there, that are close by. So let's. Sean, go ahead.
I'm just burning to get this thought out because I came up with it last night. A potential a thing I'd like to see, a direction the show might go, an idea to consider. The way it might open is with Brienne reading from the White Book about Dunk,
that would be
Sir
cool.
Duncan Natal. Right? That'd be a good way to tie it. Like modern viewers might, I don't know if they could recast her. I feel like she would be excited to do it. I would hope.
Just
But,
one
I mean, I
scene,
feel like
yeah.
even without the Brienne aspect of it, the idea that, like, just like how House of the Dragon started with, years before Daenerys Targaryen, it could be like the White Book, like scrolling through like pages, and you see like different people, like technically, like the White Book might be relevant in general,
even if it's not Brienne, someone reading from the White Book,
or
a way to
with that title,
set
Knight
up
of
the
Seven
time
Kingdoms.
period in a flashback.
Yeah, because they called her that in season 8, especially. So that's a big deal. Yeah, it's
But also, I don't know that I think they want to like spoil that for people at the beginning. The idea that Dunk becomes a knight of the Kingsguard. Like, yeah, they could know and a lot of people would, but I don't know if they want to be that
That's a good point.
blatant, actually.
That's a good point. They might not want to reveal that. You're right. Maybe they'll do that later. Maybe that would be a fun way to start like a later season, maybe once it's more established. I don't know, but that's a good point. That is a good counter argument there. Joe,
you also wouldn't want people stopping and screenshotting it and be like, died at Summerhall.
Yeah.
Like, oh no, the entire show's ruined.
Yeah, it's funny.
Not what happens, it's how it happens.
Yeah, we were warning Sean not to reread A Song of Ice and Fire because there's House of the Dragon spoilers in there. It was like, well, yeah, for folks if you haven't read the Hedge Knight, there's spoilers in Song of Ice and Fire for that too. A Song of Ice and Fire has become very spoilery for these secondary projects, the successor shows. So, Joe Magician, you have some great notes in our document here about why you think this will be the easiest adaptation of the group. I think on the surface, I can see why that's true, but you've got a lot of details here that you've listed. Let's get into that.
Well, sure. If you look back at how George wrote A Song of Ice and Fire, he wrote it on the heels of the end of his TV career, or his first TV career. Yeah. And he specifically wrote A Song of Ice and Fire with the idea that I never want this filmed. I want this to be as hard as possible. It will never make it to screen. Dunk and Egg is very different. Dunk and Egg is written almost like a treatment ready for the screen. It's a first-person POV. There's tons of detail about what's going on around them, stage directions, a well-established group of characters. So if you were looking at what George has produced for this Westeros world, I mean, if you talk about Fire and Blood, you talk about the main books, you talk about the world of Ice and Fire, Dunk and Egg is the clear winner in terms of, like, if you just want to slap this on the screen with just a slight write-up to it, just to break it down into who's saying what and like some scene changes, like, this is the way to go. This is by far the easiest one. You don't have to do anything in terms of like adding too much. As it stands, it's just perfect. Put it right on the screen. And also it's really good at keeping a low budget on it, because no dragons, lots of CGI, there's no huge battles. It really is, it's something that could be produced almost as a play if you wanted to. It's like just like have a few different scenes and you just go between them. So it's surprising that this one never got made, because it's just so easy to do.
Yeah. Sean?
One quick interjection I want to make is that it's even already storyboarded with the graphic novels.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That's one of the first steps of like producing a show, and that's already done too. So
yeah.
I other than like the potential of like having to manipulate things around to stretch out for 6 episodes or to make HBO producers happy or something like that. But yeah, the story is set and it's not expensive. I could see why maybe it wasn't as quick to get picked up, because it doesn't have the fantasticness or epicness of Game of Thrones. It might be harder to draw in a massive audience when you can't show a dragon on the screen. But I don't care about that. I want a good drama. And I bet I'm confident that another reason for this moment, it getting catapulted forward, is the success of both The Mandalorian and The Last of Us. This wolf cub story is doing really well right now, and HBO is like, don't we already have a wolf cub story? Like, let's go on.
Don't forget The Witcher. That's another version of that. Like, she is literally called
all kind of the same thing.
He's literally the wolf, and she's so, it's really it's a good system, a good
formula for adventure. Or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely, it's great. You have special. It's even basically already in Song of Ice and Fire too. Like arguably Sandor Arya is like a variation on that.
Bran Hodor.
Bran Hodor, yeah, same. Yeah, these are all very special child, burly protector, Brienne Podrick. That's even more similar to Dunk and Egg directly.
There's Aegon the Sixth and Duck.
Oh yeah,
the other Dunk and Egg.
Yeah, the other Duck and Egg.
Duck and Egg. He did it again. He just keeps bringing it back.
Can't help it.
And also, one thing that also makes this really, really easy, if you compare it especially to House of the Dragon, is again, it's first-person POV. We don't have to. There's no guesswork about who said what. Was Mushroom right? Was Eustace like trying to go between them? It's just like it's all factual. You can just go with what you got, add to it if you want, but the facts of the story are extremely well known. So in terms of if you're asking for an adaptation, how much do you have to make? How much creative output do you have to put in as a showrunner and a head writer to make this into a TV show? Basically none if you don't want to. It's all there.
Yeah, it's a great point. Like when you lay it all out like that, it's like, wow, yeah, it is almost not surprising that this was the one that got picked, or maybe it is surprising that it didn't get picked sooner. Sean, you mentioned The Mandalorian and Last of Us. Another one I want to mention related to The Mandalorian is Andor, which was a Star Wars show that took a little bit of a chance in that it removed a lot of its most selling items. It got rid of, there's no Jedi or lightsabers.
There's no lightsaber in the whole thing.
The
and it was still very acclaimed and popular and successful. Yeah, it's when you just focus more on the drama and the character development, you don't necessarily need. Now, again, I don't know if that story would have done as well if it didn't have Star Wars attached to it. Like just from a marketing standpoint, not as many people would have been aware or motivated to watch it. But given that Martin has this name, just make a good show and maybe you don't have to use as much flashy marketing.
Yeah, if it has the vibe and the quality, then yeah, you're right. So I think that's what a lot of us are hoping for. I mean, that if that can work, then it opens up so many more options for them down the road for other shows that don't have to have dragons or what have you.
Oh, there will be some dragons, but there'll be dream dragons.
Yeah,
you don't have to. Yeah, no fights. No,
they can
nobody
get images of
castle.
Dragons on screen still. That's true.
Yeah, but still very, very low budget compared to anything else they're talking about making. This is just like you could just go to a random castle in England with a meadow and you're good. Yeah, that's the whole thing.
CGI and some little fill in some gaps here and there, but it's partial CGI. You're not doing a whole castle out of CGI. Kind of like how they did with River Run, where they had that front that Shay and Christina and I visited and saw what it really looked like, and they just saw the edit they made to it. Yeah. So yeah, we have expectations. What's a word that would describe expectations that are more than good?
Fabulous
expectations, not
extraordinary expectations.
Yes, but not great expectations. No, we have great bastard.
The worst book ever read. Great Expectations is such a hard read. Dickens really did not do himself any favors with that one.
Yeah. So George R. R. Martin himself, for Game of Thrones, the original show, he wrote one episode each for each of the first 4 seasons, and then it got to be too much, and et cetera, that fell off. He's attached to this as a writer, but it's unclear what his involvement is, whether he'll write an episode or just have a finger in several different scripts. It's unclear, but it's interesting that he's been named here as more than just a producer. So I wonder if what do you think about this, Joe Magician? Do you have any insight or just any guesses?
I kind of thought they were just giving him the writer's credit because he wrote the Hedge Knight. Okay. I thought that's what it meant. I don't know if he's actually going to produce any episodes. Like they do this a lot, unlike where the source author gets a writer's credit on stuff. Like if he's really going to write an episode, I mean, like, does he even have to? I mean, like it would just be like chop up, cut and paste, send out, like just break it up a little bit for like screen direction.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know. He hasn't said he's writing any part of it. He actually talked about this on the video you guys did with him, where he got very good as he got through Hollywood at making sure he got lots and lots of titles and making sure that they were paid appropriately. So this may be another case of George making sure that he gets the appropriate level of credit and the commensurate royalties coming back from it.
Can I say that when we saw George, we'll talk about it in the mid-roll, we saw George last night at a screening. Night of the Cooters, but he's credited as a producer on that, but he's credited as Lord High Producer.
Yes, he was Lord.
Yeah.
That's in the credits.
I just really appreciate it. He's like, yeah, this is an independent short film. He could choose however he wants to be credited. This is his movie. And he's like, let's have a little fun with it. And I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Even though it is, I do completely agree with you, Joe, that it's a well hashed out story that might not need much writing effort, especially from George. But I still, maybe this is hopeful thinking, but I still think that there is at least potentially a lot for him to contribute, especially if, say, they write it out and they make some changes or tweaks. They want to remove or add a character, or maybe they even want to have more diverse casting, because this is almost all a bunch of white men. So maybe they want to find a way to feature more women or minorities. They might say, hey, George, what house could we cast with, an ethnic minority? Or what's Hansel's backstory? What if they want to do a whole episode on her and make her a more known, fleshed out character?
That is what they should do. And that's I think, when
idea.
he hints at the Dornish adventure stuff, like, I think that's what he's saying is like, hey, we need to give more time.
And maybe they even ask him a bunch of questions like, hey, what are some things you wish you included? What's some directions you want to go in? What's some background we might set up? That I could still see a lot to pick his brain on, enough maybe to write a few pages or spend a few hours enough to justify his name and the pay as a writer.
Definitely one section we have in this episode
sure.
is to talk about stuff that's quoted fixes, sort of like what you're saying, Sean. There's some the most obvious one is to fill in the Blackfire details, which are just not there at all, which really should be. And given how much they all love the Blackfires, I mean, us, y'all, that George, Ryan Condal, it's his favorite period of Westeros history. So it's not only going to be set up in other projects, but it's got to be set up in this one. I mean, it's in the Sworn Sword. I mean, that's like the main thing there. So it's pretty obvious that it's got to be included, but that's one of the more obvious ones. I think there are some that are less obvious that if we were to think about it, something like what you just said, Sean, is a good idea. They could bring in, there could be some sellsword company around for some reason. I don't know why they'd be there, but there are reasons for other people to be there. There's going to be markets and vendors and things like that. So there is an opportunity to include a lot of different actors and characters and people from different places. But yeah, it's a good point. So speaking of Ryan Condal, he is attached as an executive producer, and so is Vince Gerardis. Vince Gerardis has been around the...
he's one of George's main producing partners, and I mean, Maester, Gerard, like, is named after Vince Gerardis. It's literally is a major character in our series.
Yeah. Maester Gerardis, that's right. He's in there. He got one of his name drops.
Yeah.
It's an appropriate thing for him to be a Maester.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's pretty important. And Ryan Condal probably won't be terribly involved. Just keeping a finger involved, a toe in the pool, so to speak. Checking in on those Blackfires.
It definitely does sort of seem to be a spin-off of House of the Dragon, in the sense, because obviously Ira Parker came from his writing team. Now they brought in Vince Gerardis, who produced 73 episodes of Game of Thrones, and this is also Ira Parker's first showrunner job. So it seems quite clear that Condal and Gurm are basically putting him together with people that will help him on his big promotion, I guess. Yeah, so which is kind of what it is for him.
Yeah, you're right. They're basically creating almost like a third option for a showrunner within this sphere, under this umbrella. Maybe 10 years from now, Ira Parker will be running a Sea Snake show or something. Who knows some other project in the future, something we haven't even conceived of. Yeah. That's
Rings of Power 2 Electric Boogaloo.
Oh boy. So the working title is A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, The Hedge Knight. And A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms has some obvious vibes to it. It's a little generic. You wouldn't obviously know that that's Westeros. I mean, if you would if you know the Seven Kingdoms. But if you're a fan of, if you've only seen the TV shows, that might not immediately strike you as Game of Thrones. But the other details in the marketing, I'm sure, would make that clear. And we've taken a lot of quotes from George's blog post on this topic, on the news about the show and what he's said about it. So we're going to read most of those quotes throughout this episode and use those as vamp to discuss. Here is why it won't be called Dunk and Egg or something like that.
I love Dunk and I love Egg, and I know that fans refer to my novellas as the Dunk and Egg stories, sure, But there are millions of people out there who do not know the stories, and the title needs to intrigue them too. If you don't know the characters, Dunk and Egg sounds like a sitcom. Laverne and Shirley, Abbott and Costello, Beavis and Butthead.
I love that he chose Beavis and Butthead.
He knows that exists. Just kind of tickles
I liked
me.
it. I saw like a lot of kind of clickbaity articles too that like went about it. They're like, George R. R. Martin doesn't want the new spinoff to be like Beavis and Butthead. I was like, what a weird way to put that. But like, sure, get your clicks.
Who thought this was like Beavis and Butthead?
Why would he want it? Like, do you want it? Like, who among us does want it to be? I'm like, if we could have any show we wanted at the flick of at the snap of my fingers, I would want to see that, but I wouldn't want anyone to put effort into that above these other projects.
Yeah, no, I actually would like a comedic, sitcom-y Dunk and Egg animated version. Like, that sounds good, but so does what we're gonna get.
Oh.
Beavis would want to see Summerhall.
Yes, Beavis would want to see Summer. Beavis would love Ares. He's like, why? This Mad King is the best king. Beavis in Westeros would be spelled B-A-E.
I would like to see art of Ares as Beavis. Actually, like, this would be actually perfect.
Let's get on San Rixian and ask her to draw.
That.
I just remembered there actually is a story like that.
What?
Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead.
Oh.
Maybe that's what he was thinking about. Maybe somebody was like, oh, so it's like Beavis and Butthead, like Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. He's like, no, it's much more serious. It's about dreams and nights.
But no, I think like you have it in the doc, you have it in the doc, but the official title does not matter because people will call it Dunk and Egg. Like, and ultimately, like if you think about like, let's say, who knows what Twitter will be like at that point, but as the example on Twitter, how they have hash flags, which is where you get like a little like emoji next to a hashtag. Yeah, they're going to have Night of the Seven Kingdoms as a hashtag or whatever, the Hedge Knight, but they will have hashtag Dunk and Egg with a little emoji. Like, they will have that, so we'll be calling it Dunk and Egg.
I agree.
They didn't want us to call House of the Dragon the Hot D, but we did it anyway.
And people still get that title wrong all the time. People still call it House of Dragons or the House of Dragon, or it's just people still can't get that right out there in the world.
It's also just kind of a weird name. Like, you could sort of see the marketing process they went through this. It's like, all right, so what's a Hedge Knight? And they went around the room, and most people are like, I don't know. Is that like medieval somehow? Is something to do with knights? Is this like the Last Kingdom? Is this The Witcher? Like, does that have anything to do with Westeros? No. Okay, so let's add in some other stuff that people might know. Seven Kingdoms. People have heard of that, right? Well, okay, maybe. Like maybe that comes up. A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. Well, people that remember the episode where Brienne got knighted, sure. So we're getting some Game of Thrones fans, but what about a wider audience? And they just sort of went like, all right, word salad. We're putting it all together. We're gonna SEO the crap out of this one and make sure that it hits like every single search term possible. But also, by the way, this is my personal bugbear. There are more than 7 kingdoms. There are 9 kingdoms.
There are 9 kingdoms. Yeah, you're right.
There are absolutely 9 kingdoms.
Yeah. And
9 if you include the Crown Lands, which are definitely a kingdom.
I would count that. It's been distinct for long enough, for like 300 years now. So yeah.
Fight me in the comments. There are 9 kingdoms. George is wrong.
The Crown Lands has been the Crown Lands longer than the United States has been a nation.
And the Riverlands too.
Yeah.
They are not owned by the Ironborn. Don't at me.
If the United States was really the United States, it'd just be the state.
Oh, the state.
So it's not really united yet.
State, yeah. I celebrated this news on my Instagram story by going to Dunkin' Donuts and posting my big Dunkin' drink, and
that's gonna be such
sandwich.
A good crossover.
It is.
Yeah, I see people in the chat who are like, has there been a convention where they served a brunch dish called Dunkin' Egg? Like, just the idea of like breakfast and Dunkin' Egg themed brunches.
Dunkin' Donuts and HBO, they're having conversations right now. Like, hey, let's do this, y'all.
I hope so, actually.
Tasty wildfire donut. Yes, I would totally eat that.
Also, to go back to what George is saying, Dunk and Egg is definitely a sitcom. Like, you put a laugh track to it, and it definitely could be.
I mean, we had
It is funny.
I mean, you can have sitcoms that have like great pathos and make you cry, and can have something like Baylor Breakspear can happen. Which is also where like
don't undersell yourself, George.
I mean, Better Things isn't a sitcom, but it is a half-hour, dramedy type show. So like, it is actually in between that. So Ira Parker is kind of well set up, I think, to mind the humor as well.
I think a lot of the best shows are ostensibly, superficially comedies, But once you start to get into them, you realize like, oh no, this is a drama that just has some funny stuff in it.
Yeah, I mean, anytime someone says sitcoms or shows that are mainly comedies can't be serious or can't be funny or can be funny, can't be like elicit genuine emotions. Well, think of the Futurama episode with Fry's dog. I mean, come on.
Why are you doing this to me right now, Aziz? I don't want to cry in your stream.
You're trying to avoid throwing up and crying. I'm just trying to hit you with all.
I'll do both.
It's a test.
I will do both right now.
So yeah, so
I would love to see Dunk come into the frame like Kramer, like opens the door like. Oh.
And of course we have the existing Curb Your Enthusiasm Dunk and Egg mashup.
Oh, yeah.
That was hilarious.
Perfect.
So yeah,
it's all working.
It's all there. So we're making the point, George. It is a sitcom. Just it isn't.
It's a night
It
sitcom.
It isn't
with
only a sitcom. Okay, so let's see here. Let's move on to the next section, and it reminds me, so all this talk of parallels, we are going to do a Mandalorian A Song of Ice and Fire parallels episode, speaking of that earlier, because there's a lot of parallels between the sword Blackfire and the Blackfire rebellions with the Darksaber and the Mandalorian Civil Wars, and how just having this item to fight over and saying the person who holds this is king is, yeah, there's a lot of similar things that broke out, right down to one side turning to sellswords, and yeah, anyway, we'll get into that in the actual episode. Here's another quote from George about the show we're talking about right now, The Hedge Knight.
There is no date set yet for the series premiere, or even for the show to begin shooting, but the writing is well underway. Ira has assembled a small but very talented team, and they are at it already, building on the foundations laid down last year in previous creative summits, and, of course, on the original novella. This
definitely argues for what you were saying, Joe, about how it doesn't sound like George is actually one of the writers, but gets a writing credit, because this says he's assembled a team, and it doesn't say including me or anything like that. So I wonder who they are. Maybe there's some other House of the Dragon writers or just people he's worked with before. Well, I'm sure that we'll hear who they are. But he's already written a pilot. Apparently, George called it terrific, with lots of extra R's, because George has lots of R's. Germ, you know. So there's maybe not a whole lot to say about that, other than just to point it out and say that seems good. We'd like to have a talented team. I don't know how small it is. We don't want it to be too small, but we'll just wait and see on that, I suppose.
Mostly waiting for T. Mickle to be announced that she's on this program. Mm-hmm. Of course she will be.
I hope so. That'd be great.
She finds her way onto every one of George's projects because she is wonderful.
Yes, she is. We agree. So let's talk about the next part here. I've entitled it Dreams on Dreams, more of the Dreamception theme. Here is what George says about what will happen if the Hedge Knight does well.
If the Hedge Knight turns out as well as we hope it will, our hope would be to go on and adapt the Sworn Sword and the Mystery Knight as well. That will take a few years. Then comes the hard part. Before we reach the end of the published stories, I will need to find time to write all the other Dunk and Egg novellas that I have planned. There are, gulp, more of them than I had once thought. There's the Village Hero and the Winterfell story. It's the one with the she-wolves. And maybe I need to write that Dornish adventure, too, to slip in between the Hedge Knight and the Sworn Sword. And after that, there are, more. And this is where I need to make a correction. On our last episode, when I was talking about my excitement about him talking about that Dornish adventure, Aziz said that it was what it is, which is the Dornish adventure between the Hedge Knight and the Sworn Sword. I was like, no, I don't think that's what he was saying. Yeah, that's exactly what he was saying. I should have went back and read the post. I was exactly wrong. That's what he said. And I also wanted to bring up a quote from myself at TUSCon 2016, where I asked George, I said, I just wanted to ask, I know you have quite a lot of Dunk and Egg books planned. Are we ever going to see Tansel Tootal again? Are we going to find out what happened to her? And he had a big smile on his face. Like, he lit up immediately, and he was like, well, that would be telling. And he laughed, and then he said, but I think there's a good chance, yes. And for me personally, my, my policy when I go to these readings and Q&As is like sometimes I like to ask a question just to kind of be like, hey George, we like Duncan Egg, we like Tencel, like we're paying attention to this thing that you're not maybe always asked about, even if I don't think he can tell me a lot there. I want him to be reminded that fans are huge fans of his other works, I guess.
It's a good policy.
I will say, Shay, even if you were off about what George specifically was intending when talking about Dorne or whatever, it doesn't mean he can't have other intentions also.
Yeah, no, you're right. But yeah, I was thinking we were going to see Tancel again, after the events of the Mystery Night, is what I was thinking that meant. But no, he's going to write a little... I didn't think that was an option for Duncan Egg, that we would go back ever.
And that's going to be neat, yeah. I mean, he does have a dream of his horse dying and the memories of that, and there's scenes from it. So, yeah, I mean, it's not a whole lot, but that would be cool if he fully fleshes that out.
There are things that there aren't a whole lot to that become full episodes, right? Like,
True that. Who knows what the morrow will bring us indeed, y'all? To quote Dunk himself. And... yeah, so there's a lot of possibilities there, and he originally had said, if you look at old interviews, he said, yeah, I've got a bunch planned. Eventually, he started to settle on the word 9, or the number 9, for how many there were. But nowadays, he doesn't say that. He says 9 minimum. It seems like it's more around a dozen, and that was before the show was announced. So now that was before he considered writing a Tancel adventure, or all. So it's really just... the tale grows in the telling yet again. It just, that's how it works.
I mean, classic George.
Yeah, classic.
The man's dreams far outpace his ability to put him to pen to paper, as it were.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're looking at the ones he's already told us about, what are they called? They're, hang on, I put them in here somewhere. The Sellsword, the Champion, the Kingsguard, the Lord Commander. It's like, oh, there's some spoiler titles there. And also the Dornish Adventure one. We know a little bit about that one. That yes, he does go to Tancel, but he makes his way all the way down to Planky Town, which is quite far into Dorne, almost all the way into Sunspear. So there's a lot of possibilities. Especially George has been wanting for a while to put Starfall on the scene. That could definitely be a part of his journey if he wanted to. If you're going through the Prince's Pass, take a detour and see the Danes, maybe. Drop another dunk seed there while he's there.
It's the House of Egg's mother. It would make sense. They'd have a compelling reason to go. It wouldn't be random, right?
Yeah.
So that's cool.
And also Dunk has a lot of kids he's got to leave behind at certain points. So a lot of these stories are actually, someone in the chat is like, oh no, they're going to put sex in Dunk and Egg. I'm like, I got bad news for you, dude. Dunk almost smashes in every single one and is going to in the future.
Yeah, Dunk's hot. There's not going to be any way around that,
Yeah, but there's also a lot of Dorne he could show us, because we haven't really seen a ton of it. We've seen some stuff from Areo Hota, and then going to the Water Gardens and back, and we've seen a little bit of the green blood with the ambush. But I mean, like, if you plot the route going from the Prince's Pass all the way to Planky Town, there's a lot of good places along the way that George probably wants to write about. You also got Ironwood. You could see more of the green blood. You could see Vaith, all these kind of places. A lot of things that are sort of just in the world of Ice and Fire, but would be kind of interesting to put on the screen itself.
I like the way you think. These are great ideas.
There's also, of course, the Village Hero. I think the one that most people are looking forward to the most.
She-Wolves?
We don't know a lot about...
Hero?
Oh, She-Wolves too.
Yeah.
Village Hero is speculated to maybe be Pennytree.
Yes.
That this will be where Egg meets his future wife. It's always been kind of confusing. Where does Egg meet her exactly during his travels and stuff like that? But as we know, as we're going to talk about, Bloodraven ends up making his way into Egg's life a lot more after the Mystery Night. It would make a lot of sense if he somehow manipulated Egg to find and Dunk to find their way into Pennytree to solve this long simmering feud that the Brackens and the Blackwoods have been, having for forever. And George really likes writing about. He really wants to put like somebody in there, and Dunk is the perfect person for it.
Yeah, I like that a lot, and I think that Bloodraven we'll talk a little bit about more later in this episode, because he's a big part of what they'll have to sort of retcon for the Hedge Knight, because he was obviously around then but isn't mentioned. And given all the stuff with dreams and everything, you could see them aligning some more sort of deep cut a Song of Ice and Fire, meaning the great prophecy, meaning the coming of the others stuff, to sort of align some of that, or have some early dreams, or Bloodraven having his own visions, or just looking ahead politically and being like, well, if a Targaryen and a Blackwood marriage would be a good thing potentially to have in our back pocket. Maybe multi-tiered reasoning there. Very cool. But imagine Egg in the desert walking through Dorne. He would really have to keep that head covered, wouldn't he?
Yeah, that's true.
Do you think maybe they
having a good time?
They take on assumed names while they're down there, like, I don't know, Cooper and Darnell, maybe? Just another Lord Commander before
Duper and Carnell. Duper and Carnell.
Dunker and Agnell. Yeah. Yeah, the She-Wolves could be interesting. We've talked about that a few times, but that would be, folks are going to love to see like earlier Starks. That's always a big draw. We're looking forward to seeing how that goes. Season 2 of House of the Dragon, we're going to see Starks, and fans will be pretty excited for that. It's almost a guarantee that some of that will be in some of the trailers right away to build the hype. So, yeah, this one would be a ways away. But not only would it bring in the Starks, but it bring in Greyjoys, and that's fun, having Starks versus Greyjoys with Dunk and Egg mixed in there, and all this different women. Now, if y'all remember, we did an episode on Lord Cregan just a few weeks ago, and this is exactly the era that follows him. Baron is Lord of the North, and Dagon Greyjoy. Baron was his his grandson of Cregan. So you had another thought here. There's another one, the famous scene. I know we've brought this up before, but we never asked you about it. So let's say you weigh in on the famous scene from Bran's vision that we might see one day in Dunk and Egg, related to a certain younger version of a popular character.
Young Nen, as it were. Yeah, Bran's Weirwood vision, the first time he connects to the Winterfell Weirwood, he sees a whole bunch of visions all at once, and fans have been going nuts for years trying to figure out which one is which and who is who. Is which Stark bastard is it, like, in the tree? Which one had a bow? But the one that people love the most is a giant of a man kissing a young woman underneath the Weirwood tree. And there's been a lot of speculation for a while, especially from Crowfoot's daughter, who has tried to connect Dunk to basically every tall person in Westeros in the current timeline. And one of the ones that she and other people have identified is Hodor, that there's a lot of similar language about the way George writes about the two characters. And if Dunk continues his his smashing spree through Westeros, if he's related to Hodor, well, Old Nan is his grandmother or great-grandmother. I think is that the relationship?
Yeah, it would be grandmother, or it could be great grandmother. Yeah,
it's one of the two, whichever one it is. So a lot of people think that this is actually Dunk with a very attractive young Nan kissing underneath the Weirwood tree and the She-Wolves, because Dunk is not he's a Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, and as such he does not keep to the vows that he may or may not have taken, especially the chastity part.
The Knight of Seven Kingdoms who makes the 8. Hey.
Yeah, he may have made the 9.
He may have made the full 9, indeed. I wouldn't be surprised.
He goes everywhere, and that would be a lot of fun to see. Especially, Old Nan is a kind of beloved character in A Song of Ice and Fire, and seeing her as her hot young self. Oof.
Yeah,
getting ready for that one.
Yeah, a bunch of us lusting after young Nan. That'll be funny.
Young Yung. There's no own there. It's young Nan.
That's right. Yeah. So that does give a lot of potential, and you can just imagine how the various ways they might give little clues, little Easter eggs. Easter eggs is a funny term to use with Dunk and Egg to connect Hodor to Bran. I mean, Hodor to Dunk, and Nan to young Nan to old Nan. That'll be easier. Which is an example, of course, when you think of a character who's alive or was alive at the beginning of a Game of Thrones, who was actually alive back then. You think of maybe Bloodraven, who's that way because of magic. But Aemon, who's actually Egg's brother, is, of course, one of the most major ones. That's a beloved character, and I'm sure that's a very obvious possibility for a way for them to expand the story a bit. To something to add a few more pages here and there, add a scene here and there, showing Aemon in season 1. He's not in the book, but showing him... Yeah, they're going to want to do that at certain point, if not right away. Maybe not like episode 1, but maybe episode 1. You know what I mean? How do you guys feel about that? About how they might include Aemon, given he's not. Like, we do know there is one example of them off page saying, hey, we went to Old Town and visited him and drank the fearsomely strong cider that still gets mentioned in A Feast for Crows because they still
that's right.
brew it strong 100 years later, which why not? It's a winning recipe. Keep it going. But any thoughts come to mind for how that might? Sean, looks like you got an idea.
I wonder if they could show Egg before he runs away. Yeah, maybe they could do it with flashbacks, but maybe just show him before he runs away, but still hide the fact that he's a prince. If they show Egg and Aemon just talking about some historical hero or playing some game in a field, we get to see their interaction and get to show us Aemon. It might not be as meaningful if the general audience isn't connecting who that is, since they don't know who Egg is. But it might become more meaningful later on when you realize, wait, if he's the prince and that was his brother, then, that's just one idea of how they might do it. Might show Egg's frustration with his life at court, the reason why he runs away. But still, I don't think they want to spoil the fact that he's the prince that quickly.
Yeah.
So they would have to do it in a way that hides who he really is. I don't know.
Yeah. They might have maybe some opening scene where they have him running away, something like that. Or because we know that Makar's sent all his men out to look for him. And Daron tells all these lies about what happened. And so they could include that. Like, that could be a scene rather than just hearing about that later, like in 2 sentences. That would make sense. Any thoughts on that, Joe?
If they do the, for the Aemon part, how to introduce them, I think the easiest way is if they do the Dornish adventure, go looking for Tansel, go to Highgarden, go to Old Town first, have that start the season there, and then move out and then head down to Dorne. I mean, it's most people, there's a long established path going from Old Town to Dorne as they have sacked each other back and forth. So it would be an easy route to go down to Old Town, go up, go through the Prince's Pass. Nailed it.
Yeah, I could see that. Another one that we didn't mention that could be one of those titles that you threw out is that he has said that one time George was asked at a convention, will we find out more about the outlaw lord that slew Maekar? And he's like, yes, but you'll have to wait for a future installment of Dunk and Egg for that. Now, he did end up putting in a little bit of that detail in the World Book, even though he said it would be a spoiler to do that, but he only put in a little bit of that detail. Enough for us to do a whole episode on it around that time, the Peak Rebellion. So that's another example. Check that episode out if you're unfamiliar. But that takes place right at the end of Maekar's reign, which was a 10-year-ish reign, 10 or 12. And he dies there. So it's a pretty impactful. That's Egg's father dying. So you can see why that would be pretty meaningful as a installment for this show. It would be pretty far down the line. But it's a good option. You could see why that would be an interesting story to tell.
It's a lot of history around Dunk. You just have to throw a dart at his timeline. You could make a season out of it if you felt like it.
I would agree. So what about going beyond, though? Like, what's going to happen? I mean, three books, I remember in 2011, we were like, okay, well, he's going to he'll finish the series before the show gets there. Like, nope, that didn't happen. He didn't even write one more.
What?
Now, to be fair,
you don't have the Winds of Winter still?
The Dunk and Egg novellas are a lot shorter. And Winds of Winter is a lot closer than it was. It's also huge at this point. The amount of work he's done it's going to be longer than Dance of Dragons already. So that's another topic. But given that, yeah, I wonder if we get to the point where he just has to hand it off, or if they just start developing it on. It's a pretty far down the line thing to think about, but realistically, the day will come where other people are writing stories in this world, and that may not be for a long time. It may not be for 20 years or something like that, but probably is going to be sooner than that. And the more shows that get made, the more likely that is to happen sooner, because they're just going to run through what he's written. Eventually, it'll run out. So that's going to happen. Who knows when, but if y'all have any thoughts on that, feel free to weigh in.
Yeah, I think if I were HBO, and by the way, HBO, you should just hire me for this stuff. Like, at me, throw in an email anyway. But
do it, hire him.
I would plan for the 3 seasons, and that would be it. There's a lot of speculation when this came out. Folks were like, "Oh no, what happens when they go beyond? What if Gurm doesn't have the stories out? All this stuff." It's like, do people not like Dunk and Egg because you don't know the ending yet? Like you don't know all of Dunk's life? No, these are beloved stories that stand on their own. You don't need to plan for this thing, the Night of Seven Kingdoms, to be a 9-season monolith of HBO programming going forever. It's fine to make it a 3 or 4 season show. Like, clearly the fans do not care that we don't know beyond Dunk at White Walls. We know where he goes eventually, but that hasn't stopped us from frothing at the mouth for the next one or to truly love these things. The viewership will be there whether or not George delivers the rest of them. And clearly they've decided that George is the secret sauce. They want to put things to screen that is only stuff he has finished. So just plan for that. Seems like the easiest way.
I generally agree with everything you just said, but there is one factor to consider. I think especially with this story is the casting issue. Even if they only do these 3 and they do 1 a year, they can get away with Egg aging up, I think. But if they stretch these out, or if they film 3 and then 5 years later want to do the 4th, they can't have a 20-year-old Egg unless the story jumps that far ahead too. But I don't know if that'll match up with the timeline and the stories that George wants to tell about them. So I have made the argument in the past that I really was hoping this would be animated. So I think casting Dunk especially is going to be a really difficult period.
Yeah,
finding someone that young, that big, and a good actor, it's really hard to find that. But when you also have to cast a kid and then deal with them aging up over time, I think being animated solves a lot of that problems. There are other solutions. Like maybe if they do make 3 and in 5 years later make another one, they just recast the whole thing. And if the story is good enough, I wouldn't care. Maybe they
I would think they'd need to recast everyone. Like, that doesn't seem likely they'd have to do that.
I kind of would prefer it if they recast pretty much everyone and just did a whole new thing than the one little character or something. I don't know.
I even thought that maybe even if they do 3 seasons 3 years in a row, maybe still recast it. That might be too confusing for audiences. This is probably way too much to hope for, but I thought they might do something really like, I don't know, avant-garde like that. Oh shoot, what was the name of that movie about Bob Dylan, where they had a bunch of different actors playing, including like Cate Blanchett and everything. Like that maybe even scene to scene or episode to episode, they could have different people playing the roles.
That seems unlikely.
They fit the emotion of the moment or the aesthetic of the scene or something like that. I highly doubt that they'll do something that artsy. But I could see maybe every batch of 3 if they put 3 out every 5 years and maybe have a new cast. I don't know.
I think one thing they'll do is they'll age Egg up a little bit, so he's not as young to start with, which is what they did with pretty much. That is a really common tactic. They did that with pretty much all the other young characters in A Song of Ice and Fire. They made them a little bit older.
George even wished that he had made the kids in the main series a little older. I wonder if he wishes he made Egg a little bit older too, because that is another thing too. A kid as young as Egg might literally not be able to pick up Dunk's armor. You know what I mean? Like
I would say it's like a long expected soundscape points out, like in Indiana Jones, like how they de-aged people. It's a small age difference. And well, it made me think of I think it was the most recent season of Stranger Things or the one before, but they just de-aged 11. Like they just filmed some stuff with her and used CGI to make her younger to like because they wanted to do certain flashbacks of her like when she was a little girl. But she's an 18-year-old woman now. Yes. So like they did that, and it didn't look bad. It actually worked pretty well. So like I actually think that there is with technology, technically they could extend a child being a child a little bit longer.
I can see them doing that, and I wouldn't really even object that much. But part of our in our minds, the selling point for the show is the budget is low.
Yeah,
but that starts to make the budget a little bit bigger. So,
well, if it does well enough to get a second and third season, they will have a bigger. That shouldn't be too much problem. Yeah.
Sure.
Bringing up a related show, something we've already talked about, coming back to The Mandalorian. They got around this problem by their 2 main characters. One has a mask on at all times, and the other is a puppet.
Yeah.
So you can see how that's not as big of a problem for them. But say like a show like The Last Kingdom just had their wrap-up movie, which is like 30-some years past the show. Uhtred does not look like he's in his 60s. And he's just like, oh, well, what are you going to do? Like, he looks like a slightly older Alexander Draymond. He's like, you still look like you're in your 30s, bro. But, oh, well. and Game of Thrones handled babies by just never having them cease to be babies.
They just didn't exist.
Yeah, they just babies. Well, it's kind of like Baby Yoda.
Nobody has children in Westeros.
Yeah,
Except for Gilly,
They just
whose
kind of
child
stopped
doesn't
after a
age.
certain
Yeah.
point.
yeah.
Well, but also in Game of Thrones, they really didn't recast pretty much anybody, and there's an argument they maybe should have at a certain point as characters got a lot older or as they aged out of their roles or that kind of thing. But House of the Dragon, they've basically ripped the Band-Aid on that one. They recast major characters halfway through. So I think that's sort of a proof of concept for them that if they want to do this, then they want to skip around. Audience is there for it.
They're about to see
It's
some
a good precedent setting that they had in House of the Dragon. Yeah.
Another one to compare to that I've already mentioned is The Witcher. Now, they had issues with their younger actress, Freya Allen, who was playing the role of Ciri. Ciri's supposed to be younger, but they had COVID delays, like multi-year COVID delays. Everything got so she's like, they had scenes written for her kind of like that. She's about the same age as Eleven is in Stranger Things, and the role was written for someone younger, but she aged up during COVID, and they're like, they didn't want to recast her, so they just had to like rewrite some stuff to make it more like, well, she's not 15, she's more like 19, and that's a substantial difference. And then doubling down though, Henry Cavill's going to be replaced by Liam Hemsworth, replacing the lead. So if they can do that relatively smoothly, now to be fair, Henry Cavill's far more famous than whoever is going to be Dunk. Like Dunk will probably be an unknown at this point. So recasting an unknown,
make it Ryan Core.
Recasting an unknown wouldn't be quite as big a deal. But if The Witcher can pull this off, and we haven't actually seen that they will, because it hasn't happened yet. We haven't seen the reaction to the Switch yet, and we won't for a long time because Henry Cavill's in season 3, which isn't even out yet. So we're talking about 2 years before we see the reaction to that. So maybe around the same time Dunk and Egg is coming out, Witcher season 4 will, and we'll see if a show can pull that off, like switching out someone that important. But the point about Rhaenyra and Alicent is a really good one. Like, you're right, Game of Thrones audiences are sort of primed for that, and I wonder behind the scenes how much that decision worked or didn't for them. Like, did it succeed in spite of that decision, or did that work really well? Did they get a lot of emails from people that are like, this was confusing, like we know, we're so deep into it, it's maybe hard for us to know how that affected other people, other viewer, like the casual viewer. What did the actor switch mean for them? Other folks,
luckily, there's fine folks like us that can explain.
Yeah, if you all can think of other examples of shows that switched out a major actor and did fine despite that, let us know. It'd be good. Maybe add to our discussion here. So
Doctor Who,
throw that in. Oh yeah, Doctor Who. They kind of made a point of doing that. That's kind of built into the show. That's a good call though. That's the unique version of that. Speaking of some of the other shows, George has a take here on the process. Oh, Sean, you had another take first?
I haven't even seen it, but I know The Crown, which spans decades.
Yeah,
they've switched out the actors.
That's what the House
a bunch
of the
of
Dragon
times.
was using as its model, like very clearly was.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I haven't seen that one, but I've heard a lot of people bring it up in that context. That makes sense.
I mean, they literally cast Matt Smith, a large part of based on his performance in that series. Certainly not based on Doctor Who. In both of those, he was Doctor Who and Prince Philip. So
very different from the Doctor.
Yeah,
he's done a few roles.
But I think it was probably them looking at Charles Manson and the Prince to cast him as Daemon and not Doctor Who, because I don't think you look at him as Doctor Who and go, ooh, Daemon Targaryen.
Even his evil Doctor Who moments are like nowhere near as evil as Daemon.
So here's a quote from George about production and other successor shows, including Dunk and Egg.
Way back in the summer of 2016, when HBO first started thinking about Game of Thrones spin-offs, I pitched them 2 ideas. The Dance of the Dragons, which in due time became House of the Dragon, and Dunk and Egg. That was 7 years ago. I can hardly believe it myself. The lesson there is that development takes time. I see all these stories on the net about other spin-offs being killed or abandoned. No idea where they get this stuff, and it just makes me shake my head. The Nymeria show is still in development. So is the Sea Snake show.
Yeah.
Just had a great week on that one, working with writers. And there are others, both live action and animated. And notably, I mean, when he says a great week working with writers for the Sea Snake show, if you remember, Bruno Heller, who did Rome, was the one who was doing the Sea Snake show. So assuming he's still attached, then yeah, I'm sure he did have a great week talking to the guy who worked on Rome. Like, I'm sure that was a great thing for him. But maybe it was other writers on that. And for George will never hear this, but if he's wondering where people got that from, it's because one of his production company websites took off Nymeria and Sea Snake, and when they take projects off of the website, people notice and write articles about it. I think it's kind of notable that they did that, but as George says, that does not mean that they're not in development anymore. It just means whoever's managing that website made some changes.
Yeah. Clearly, if he worked on it last week, that's...
Yeah, that answers that,
that's
even though those were removed. My point is that didn't come out of nowhere. They really weren't just articles out of nowhere. There was something that made people theorize that.
Yeah, people just took too much from that website, I think.
People on the internet took too much from too small a source and made it into a whole thing. I've never heard of that before.
I'm still most
It happens all the time.
for that Nymeria show, and I'll say I had heard some like troubling thing. Like I was concerned about it, and so then when it was, I thought when it was maybe canned, I was like, oh, okay, I'm sad, but I guess that makes sense. So to hear that it's very much still in development, I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, that's exciting. I mean,
I had kind of given up on it after like a couple of bad news about it. So
it was easy to believe that it was canceled. It was like almost too much to hope for in the first place. You know? Even though it's such a great idea, we're also, but we think it's a great idea.
If we're manifesting things like Joe manifesting working on Dunkin' Egg, certainly that's the one I want to work on is Nymeria. Please, I'll say
put
it
in a
out
good
loud.
word for you too once I get hired.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Speaking of Rome and this Bruno Heller and the Sea Snake, that's another show that swapped out a major actor. They had only 2 seasons, but the actor who played Emperor Octavian was switched. He was a kid. He was young. He was a boy, and then he was an adult. But they did not look similar at all. The two. It was very different, but they made it work. Anyway, so let's say, like it's true, right? Like Joe Magician, like can you imagine believing these rumors, right? It does make sense. These rumors made sense, though.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, it's a byproduct of how, unfortunately, how you get clicks on YouTube or on your articles and stuff like that. Like no news on Nymeria's conquest is not something that gets people to click.
No.
The question, is Nymeria's conquest canceled? That gets the click.
Yeah.
Even though it's basically the same thing. The content is the same. It's how you're presenting it. And there's a lot. This is a big market. There's a lot of media stuff around it. So how are you going to stand out? Well, asking a lot of questions about where things are inside an HBO boardroom is a good way to do it.
I'm just asking
leading questions.
Yeah. No,
I don't know.
hate
It might be canceled.
I know.
That's why I don't make them.
Yeah.
I find them annoying.
Yeah. I get it, but I can't stomach it ultimately. I just cannot.
Your shows are safe, Ashaya.
Yeah.
Everything's okay.
So apparently the first initial interest in A Song of Ice and Fire in Hollywood was in the year 2000, November 2000. So George this quote that Ashaya just read was 2016, where they started thinking about spin-offs from it. So that's going back really far. And what's interesting, in a full circle, everything connects kind of angle here, George said that the Hedge Knight really helped get A Song of Ice and Fire going. Because remember, folks, it came out right after A Clash of Kings, almost, very similar timing. And it appeared in an anthology called Legends that had a lot of other famous authors in it. A lot of people hadn't read Game of Thrones, hadn't heard of it, or hadn't picked it up because it was too big, or they weren't it was like, it's a lot of time investment. But they read the Hedge Knight in Legends, and then they went and were like, oh, I want to read Game of Thrones now. Like George credits the Hedge Knight with getting Game of Thrones going, which in turn got it on TV. So Dunkin' Egg got A Song of Ice and Fire on TV, did its part, and now A Song of Ice and Fire is getting Dunkin' Egg on TV, which is kind of how this is like a Dune Star Wars kind of thing. Like Star Wars wouldn't have existed without Dune, because Star Wars is like borrows heavily from Dune. But Dune would not have been made into a movie without Star Wars. Because Star Wars is the one that was successful on the big screen first. So, yeah, kind of like the copy helps the original sometimes.
And of course, there would be no Song of Ice and Fire without Beauty and the Beast. It all connects.
True that. Okay, folks, let's take a short break here, discuss a few other fun things and housekeeping items before we get back to our fun Dunkin' Egg Dreams discussion, which will, in the second half, involve some of the actual dreams. We are in the midst of a drive to get Patreon sign-ups. We don't have a big sponsor at the moment. It's a good time for that. Speaking of sponsors, though, one thing you will avoid in the future if you sign up for our Patreon and use the private Patreon RSS feed, which all patrons have access to at any level, you won't hear any ads. That's one of the main benefits of Patreon. I always like to say that our bonus episodes are the biggest benefit, but not having ads in any episode, whether it's the ones inserted by Spotify or whether it's the ones that we put in, like this one, these get edited out for the Patreon versions. You have to actually listen to it on the Patreon feed. We can't remove it from the main feed, and we can't do anything about the videos. The videos have ads in them, except when they're released early. So that's another benefit for y'all. Once again, that's patreon.com/History of Westeros. You can sign up for any of the many levels there. The $2 level is going away soon, so sign up now before it goes away. Once it goes away, those of you already signed up at that $2 level will keep it. So you'll be grandfathered in and be able to keep that. We'll also be announcing pretty soon.
When are we ever going to be grandmothered in, though?
Grandmothering in is a whole different thing. I don't know
Okay.
exactly what, though. That's when
Okay.
you get, I don't know. Is that when you
Cookies?
get...
It's when you overthrow the patriarchy.
Okay, yes. There you go. Old Nan leading the charge there. We're going to be announcing pretty soon some events for subscribers. Whether you subscribe on Patreon or through Spotify, we'll provide a mechanism for people who sign up through that alternate method to get involved with our game nights. So stay tuned for information on that. So, Joe Magician, CK3, my friend, we had our first debut of that just this Friday. CK3 is Crusader Kings III. It is a big, highly developed game for PC and other platforms, but it has a multi-year, huge effort mod made for it to turn it into Westeros. It is incredibly well made, incredibly well done. It puts you right in the middle of a dynasty. You rule that dynasty, whether you're the king of Westeros ruling the Iron Throne, whether it's just some lordling in a lesser house that you maybe never heard of. When you die, you take over as your heir. You do marriages, you do alliances, you do artifacts like Valyrian steel or crowns or rare books or whatever. You do banners and personality and role playing. It's a lot of people say, "Oh my god, this game's too complicated for me," which makes it a good spectator game because someone who actually knows what they're doing, it's pretty entertaining to watch. Like, I've watched people play it, and I know how to play it. It's just that good. So we're doing our streams have been on YouTube. They're moving to Twitch. The link should be in the description of this episode as well as the game stream episodes. You've been having fun with it too, huh?
Yeah, we both got into the early access for creators, and so we saw it in a very raw form.
Very raw, but...
I uploaded quite a few very broken save files that they have since fixed all the problems with. My favorite one was that Lyanna was trapped in the Tower of Joy forever. She could never leave. She could never die. John could never leave. She was just always there. She was permanently a part of the Tower of Joy. But yeah, it's a really fun game. I played a lot of the base game, Crusader Kings III, a while back on my channel. Those streams might still be up. I don't know if they are anymore.
500 plus hours in CK3. You do.
Yeah. Are you looking at my Steam profile right now?
No, I have looked at it before.
She looked at it yesterday.
I looked at it. I did look at it recently and was like, damn, it's like over 500 hours. Anyways,
the game just keeps going. There's always another turn. There's always another generation ready to come. I am planning on playing it maybe on YouTube, maybe on Twitch. I don't know which one. Sometimes it tends to throw off YouTube if you stream on YouTube, but it's not your normal content. But anyway, the video, I'm planning on making a video for it because a lot of people are moving over from never playing Crusader Kings 3 and coming straight from Crusader Kings 2, and it's a very different beast. There's a lot more to keep track of. The way it wants you to play the RPGs, like how do you win wars, what should you be building, what should your goal be going towards, like there's a lifestyle tree now where you get like a lot of perks. There's dynasty perks. So basically what I'm making a video. I actually have it written. I just have to actually like go ahead and make it. As with most of my channel, I just have to actually make things. I see your comments on my YouTube channel. But it's basically going to be how to get good at CK3, how to make things that you want to happen in the mod. How do you do it? Because a lot of times people start as like the king and then everything's fine. But what if you start as a lesser lord? What if you start as a duke in the middle of the north? How do you go from there to the Iron Throne? Like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, like what
and that's something I'm really good at.
Yeah.
Like In base Crusader Kings, I actually get bored by how often I conquer the world, so I usually stop after taking over like most of Europe. I'm like, all right, I'm good.
Well,
Like I can do the rest of it if I want. It's just busy work.
Yeah,
it's
it
a
takes
real
more effort,
pinky in the brain kind of situation, right? What do you want to do tonight? You know,
Take
same thing
Take
we do
over the
every,
world.
yeah,
Yeah.
same thing I do every night. Take over the world. Yep, it's exactly you.
Yeah.
So for those of you who didn't watch the stream, just a real brief rundown of what happened. Right now, you can play. I guess given it's still in beta, there's not a lot of the available timelines to play. You can only play right around Robert's Rebellion, right before or after. Once it's more developed, you'll be able to play in a huge variety of timelines, like all the way prior to the conquest, ancient times to modern times. We played Ned Stark during Robert's Rebellion, and it starts you at Gulltown, right before you attack Gulltown with Robert and Jon Arryn. So we did that. It went the way it goes in the books. And Ned Stark, we had him run back to Winterfell and call the banners. Apparently we took too long. While we were calling the banners, and I don't think I did anything slow, but while we were calling the banners, waiting for the troops to come, the Battle of the Trident happened. Robert kills Rhaegar just as expected. But not expected is Jaime fails to stop Aerys from detonating the wildfire. So King's Landing explodes entirely. There's no King's Landing in our game. And
the best timeline.
And so, and because of little glitches in the AI, and it just still, like I said, it's in beta. It's got a few things to work out. The computer struggled to finish the war without King's Landing as a target. And we basically, Robert's Rebellion didn't end until the beginning of the books. And so basically, like the year 298, Robert's Rebellion should have been over for 16 years, but it just ended.
And other notable things is that Ned Stark was given the title the Winter Soldier. So he was Ned Stark, the Winter Soldier.
Hello.
And so when he was with Jon Arryn, they were the Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
That's right.
Makes me laugh. But and the other funny thing is that Ned went down to Dorne. The Winter Soldier went to the desert and was immediately killed by Arthur Dayne.
Yeah, he did not win at the Tower of Joy.
Perfect.
Arthur Dayne killed him.
Because Howland Reed was dead at that point.
Howland
so there
Reed
was
died
no
during
one,
the war.
he was just. Anyways, it was all very different. But no, Ned waited out almost like 18 years of war and then just died in Dorne to an elderly Arthur Dayne who was imprisoned. So it was really very weird.
Other people who died during the really long war included Stannis. Renly survived, but Stannis did not. Robert, of course, lived.
Damn.
Yeah. But
I got that backwards.
But because the kingdom split, right? Because there's no Iron Throne to unite it all. The kingdom is the Robert's Rebellion resulted in a kingdom of the Stormlands, the Crownlands, Dorne, and the Reach. The Tywin is king of the West, independent. Jaime, of course, blew up in the wildfire thing. He married Cersei to Edmure. So Edmure is king of the Riverlands, but they have a marriage alliance.
What's up?
Yeah, and there's just a young... Jon Arryn lived longer and had more kids with Lysa, so his young 10-year-old son...
Jon Arryn did not have any
of
of
those
those
kids.
kids.
Little fingers, right? Yeah. But anyway, the someone who is masquerading as Jon Arryn's child is the Lord of the Vale, like a 10-year-old. So it's still kind of like a Robert Arryn situation, but it's not actually Robert. And Bran is king of the North because young Robb died in the cradle. He didn't make it to adulthood. So we had another son, and just to keep it consistent, we named him Bran. And he is now king because Ned was, of course, killed by... Actually, he's not king. He has the option of crowning himself. It's currently just an independent realm. But, yeah. Anyway, so we'll see what happens. Tune in to us on Twitch if you want to see where that
May
goes.
12th, Friday, May 12th
That's
on
right.
twitch.tv/History of Westeros. If you search us on the Twitch app, because we haven't streamed on Twitch in 3 or 4 years, I just don't think we show up. People have said they can't find us. I tried to find us and can't find us, but if you go to twitch.tv/History of Westeros, you will find us, and probably once we stream once, we'll be back.
Okay. Yeah.
So
either way, we'll keep
that.
reminding you all, but that should be a lot of fun. We have a great time. A lot of people gather, and it's a fun gathering of like-minded folks chatting, and you all give me advice on what to do. I call it the large council. Let's talk real briefly about last night. Ashaya and I, along with some friends, including Bran the Builder, Bran Winslow,
who did our intro, the House of the Dragon intro that y'all see during those episodes.
We went to the Atlanta Film Festival where George R. Martin was a guest, because he produced one of the films that's being shown there called Night of the Cooters, and we watched Night of the Cooters.
What the hell?
Yeah.
What a name.
Okay, well, yeah, Night
That's
of the Cooters,
what we were saying too.
It's a Howard Waldrop story, a short story, and so short film, maybe half an hour, And it's filmed using trioscope, which is this rotoscoping technique, kind of like a Scanner Darkly, kind of, like that style. Undone. Like there's a bunch of projects like that, but it's so it's it's live action but animated. It's a fusion of the two, really.
Like Waking Life.
Yeah, like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, rotoscope style. It's called Trioscope. Is the production company that's here in Atlanta that does it. But it's that style that most of you should be familiar with, of having seen something that's done it. So it was really very cool looking to see. Like it's like a western, a sci-fi western. So there's space elements and western elements and like deserts, and just the visuals just look really good. It's very funny.
And the director and lead actor was Vincent D'Onofrio.
Yeah.
Who's just
cool.
He's just loves, like a lot of actors, he likes doing these smaller things where they get to be more creative and don't have all these like restrictions put on them. And
he was there as well?
Yeah, he was there too. And so he and George were sitting next to each other talking to the crowd, and yeah, they clearly had a lot of fun with it. Howard Waldrop was George's friend. He's since passed, and so George is sort of honoring him by.
No, he's alive.
Oh, he is alive.
He's alive.
Oh, whoops!
What are you talking about?
I'm doing a Wade Boggs thing here.
I know. I was like, no.
Oh my god! I'm putting the man in his grave.
Okay, never mind then. He's still okay. He's honoring his still living friend.
Yeah.
Adopting these things, and he's trying to adapt more Waldrop short stories.
Yeah, they have more in the works, more short films.
So the premise of the film is in the War of the Worlds, there was these canisters with the Martians in them that landed on Earth and started doing their thing. And these canisters were mostly landed around big cities. Like London was the one that was most prominently named, I think. Well, if you read the story carefully, apparently there's some unaccounted for canisters. So some of these other canisters with Martians in there landed somewhere, and they decided, well, what if it's Pachuga, Texas, where these canisters landed? So Cooters is just a nickname they give these Martians. So yeah.
A couple other things about that.
It's hilarious.
About that little screening. One, the movie itself was good. Yeah, I highly recommend that when you have a chance. But George is also here in Atlanta for the weekend. The Atlanta Film Festival is going on all this week, so there's other events and little tidbits that y'all might appreciate hearing. One is that I heard that today, I guess that it was tomorrow yet, today, there's a little film festival gala happening. George will be in attendance, and he, another friend is going to be introducing him to Francis Ford Coppola, and George is very excited about that. So I think that is nice to think about, to like, big icons meeting. And if you're curious what else George is doing in Atlanta, that's one. The other thing he's doing is on Monday, he's going to the Braves game and is going to call ball.
He gets to do the ceremonial first pitch, the play ball.
The play ball,
So that's right. The Braves were a sponsor of the event last night, which was cool.
So also,
Braves fans, happy to see them.
If you're listening live and you're in Atlanta and you happen to have a reason to want to go to the Atlanta Braves game on Monday, well, George will be there. So,
if you can stomach a Braves game.
So that's what else he's doing. And then he's going on up to Illinois. So if you're in the Illinois area, they will be at some different film festivals there. So you might have a chance to see Night of the Cooters and hear George speak. So I would keep an eye out on his Not a Blog and check that out if you're up there.
Yeah, absolutely. One last note: the place we saw this it's called the Rialto Theater, and
Rialto Center for the Arts.
Rialto Center for the Arts,
yes.
And 11 years ago, Ashay and I were there to see the premiere of season 2. That was the last time we were
Thrones,
there.
Yes,
yeah,
special screening, neat. And at this at the event we went to, they brought that up. Actually, they were like the first event that they had with this new screen. They had a new screen for that. And then 11 years, and now they have a new. This screening of Night of the Cooters was the first thing they showed on the new screen, and that episode of Game of Thrones was also the first thing they showed on that old new screen.
Anyway, 2 times we've been there.
Really,
you guys would wreck their budget if you went more often. They'd have to get a new screen like every week.
That's a good point.
It's actually just for you guys. Yeah. Oh my God, Aziz and Ashay are showing up. New screen.
All right, let's get back to Duncan Egg.
Yeah.
First of all, a few questions from you.
Oh, yeah, that's what we were doing.
Yeah, Duncan Egg, something.
Related. Here, but,
Kirsty Angel sends a super chat, says, Dunk at Trial of 7 says, quote, his wooden finger, referring to his lance, after he sits under his tree, elm, which is an elm tree, right, which is the one that is in his sigil, doesn't know where he's from, lies about knighthood, and takes some of Rohan's hair. Is Dunk like Pinocchio? Lies, and he's a green childlike. He's a Woden/Odin finger, the wooden finger, Lord of Underworld, Elm, the Night's King, gold hair on Night's King's sword in the show, or Puppet Master? Is he good or mayhaps evil? Well, I think it's kind of hard to see Dunk as evil, but I do think, it's just a way to maybe show that even good people have to tell lies sometimes. I mean, honesty is, we all like to tell the truth all the time, but in reality, the truth is not appropriate. You don't just like yell out the truth at random moments. There's diplomacy and being cautious with when you tell people things. And yeah, so I don't think he's evil, but I think that in fact, I'd say he's probably one of the goodest characters in the novels. But even good people have to do,
like Brienne.
Yeah, even good people have to do things that maybe would fall in a vacuum into the evil category from time to time. It is an evil world he lives in, sort of. What do you guys think about that?
Dunk has to fight dirty. He has to lie sometimes. He clearly, at some point, does break some vows. Well, it depends on when he actually has those kids, but it's pretty certain the way George is going about it that the question is, of course, did he actually swear them? Is he breaking anything? But Dunk is supposed to stay there as sort of a character who is kind of straddling what's right and what's what he has to do to survive, and that makes him puts him into a lot of very very human scenarios where he has to do things that he doesn't want to do, but he kind of has to. And like he's almost always undercover too. Like in every story, doesn't he have like a false name at some point?
Very often, yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of who he is. He's not only good, he's not evil, he's Dunk.
It brings up some ethical conundrums, like if you're gonna starve, or you could steal something and not starve. Well, which is worse? Like letting yourself starve is arguably even less ethical than stealing food from someone that has enough food that you're not going to kill them by stealing their food.
Or stealing a knighthood.
Sure. Yeah.
I think that a couple of thoughts here. One is it's, stuff we've hashed out a million times, but there's a difference between what is, I don't know, theoretically good or morally correct or whatever, and what's expected by some social construct like knighthood, right? So Dunk seems to be more definitively moral, whatever being a knight is supposed to mean. He's just moral, and even if he lies, in my opinion, lying in and of itself is not evil. I think to do something evil, you have to be actively hurting somebody. Like accidentally hurting someone isn't evil, and telling a lie that doesn't hurt anyone, even if it's an active lie, it still is not. Does that make sense?
Like a surprise party. You have to lie to someone to have a surprise party. Like, how's that evil?
Right,
Or
evil.
So
Exactly.
evil.
Yeah, like we bring up like Santa Claus and
That was
things
the
like
evilest
that.
thing you've ever done for me, Aziz.
It is evil if they don't want a surprise party.
I don't think it's evil even then.
No,
honestly.
it's just wrong. Yeah. It's just a bad idea. A mistake. Yeah, mistakes aren't evil, like Sean said. Yeah, intent is. You're right. Intent is a big part.
I mean, yeah, like technically, giving the example of the surprise party. If I had told you ahead of time, hey, I don't want a surprise party after we stream, please never do that, and then you did that, it would be kind of messed up, but still not really evil because like it's not causing me that much.
It'd
like
be jerky. Yeah,
it'd be jerky,
rude,
but like
maybe.
evil is even further than like just messing with someone or doing something they don't like. Like evil is like causing, like having great ill intent and wanting to hurt them, and like, I mean, to me, evil is like even like that defines you. Like that isn't just like a thing you do something one time. I don't know.
If you want to make it less binary, more like a spectrum. Like if evil is the end of the spectrum, like it's maybe on the spectrum, but like super at the beginning. Like like the palest. Like if black is like dark black is evil. Like this is like.
And if we're going on that spectrum, Dunk is like barely off-white.
Yeah.
To me.
Yeah.
He's barely off-white. Like he's one of the closest to like just full pure white that we have in the whole series. So no, I would not say that he is at all evil.
This discussion aside, though, it is still an interesting parallel that they're making to Pinocchio, and it is noteworthy.
I agree.
Even if
bring it back to the Pinocchio thing. That is a good. I like that comparison. I know we in general like comparing other works to George's works and seeing.
Well, then you got
writing styles.
another great super chat from Kirsty Angel that does more comparing.
Okay, let's keep it going then. She says Bloodraven and the Thousand Eyes in One, linking that to Arabian Nights, 1001 Nights. What do we think of Old Nan as a comparison to Scheherazade, the storyteller in 1001 Nights, and the Raven's teeth are like Sandman's Corinthian. He has teeth for eyes, and he's a nightmare made flesh. Unfortunately, I don't know Sandman. I don't know the character Corinthian. I do know a little bit about Arabian Nights, and that is a pretty interesting, because the Scheherazade is like real, isn't it really old as well? Isn't that an ancient being? If I remember correctly,
it's the worst magic card ever made.
Yeah, Scheherazade is the worst magic card ever made. That's true. So yeah, that's pretty cool. The 1001 does kind of conjure images of that, and the 1001 eyes, each one could tell its own story, and each one is watching an entirely different thing, and they're all unique and individual. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I like that. Any other takes on that? Like I said, unfortunately, I don't know Corinthian, so I have no take on that one.
I guess kind of just one small thing is that when you guys talked to George, you guys tried to bring up a bunch of references you thought he was talking about in the Night Fort, and he's like, no, I didn't do that.
That was
so
unintentional.
Yeah. He's just a genius. It's just that simple. He just has all of this in his brain that he says. Ultimately,
he references stuff. Sometimes he doesn't, and just because it doesn't have to be valuable because George is actually referencing it. It can just be a cool thing for you to notice. It's just like, I doubt a lot of this is intentional, but
it doesn't need to be.
It's still fun to find things.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be intentional for it to be interesting, cool, make you think.
For you to think about. Yeah,
it does not need to be intentional at all. You're right.
I like the idea of Raven's teeth as a nightmare concept because Raven, obviously birds don't have teeth, but it's scary to think about them having teeth.
My nightmare. It sounds terrible.
It's pretty nightmarish. A Long Expected Soundscape says, how much do you think they'll end up weaving in Aegon's dream to keep that through line running? I think they're they're going to include it. I think they'll include it a decent bit.
For sure.
I wonder, my question is how much they'll include right away. Will it be something they start throwing in right away? Because Egg doesn't really start talking about his dreams right away. We have Daron the Drunkard's dreams like straight off, like episode 1 probably, because he meets Daron like in like page 4. It's like the next thing that happens after
he instantly starts talking about
he buries Sir Arlen, says the words, then he walks for a little bit, boom, at the end, Daron the Drunkard right there. That's it. It's the next thing, and then he meets Egg 5 minutes later in the stable. So I think it's very likely. I think we're gonna see, maybe it's one of the things Joe Magician talked about, that they could expand the story to show other things happening, maybe have dreams. Maybe we don't see Egg, but we see his dream. And that's a way to kind of introduce us to these characters and introduce other characters who are dreaming. Maybe we see Aemon have a dream. Maybe Daron's the one maybe to focus on because his dreams are actually prophetic. We don't know that the other Targaryens of his siblings had prophetic dreams. We know they quote unquote dreamt of dragons, as Aemon said in that opening quote, but he's being metaphorical in some cases. We don't know for sure that these dreams were prophetic, or they're just having dreams of dragons that keep popping up into their heads, like Aemon himself seems to be having when he says, "I hear their hot breath and leathern wings and all that." He's not having prophetic dreams. He's maybe you could argue they are, because he's having those dreams because the dragons have come back, and the presence is causing him to have those dreams. But it's not really prophecy. There's not predicting events. There's no future being told here. It's just dragons are in his dreams, right? Whereas Daron is specifically dreaming of Dunk and the Shadow and all these other actual things that actually come to pass. So I think there's a distinction to be made there, and I think this is maybe where we'll get into some of that without the dragons, without the others. They have more. Without the kingdom being torn apart by civil war, we might actually get to focus on this aspect, which has always been really important. So I feel like they'll include a lot of it. What do you guys think? Any specific ideas?
Well, I think for sure. I think that's one of the areas they could definitely expand on, especially with Blackfire retcons that are almost certainly coming to the Hedge Knight. This could be a good one too, especially since they're spinning it off seemingly from their own writing team in House of the Dragon. I would expect them to connect the two a lot more than they are within the actual text.
Right on.
Yeah, I feel like there's a precedent being set in House of the Dragon to focus on these dreams. probably, if not under the direction of, under the acceptance of George. And it makes sense that any way they can tie the shows into each other, they will. And this is a good one. Even potentially tying it back, I even wonder, like, I this probably isn't like a completely new theory, but it was new to me, I don't know, sometime in the past few months. The idea that, like, some of Egg's dreams, like almost all these dreams, are guaranteed to get misinterpreted in different ways, right? And some of the dreams that Egg might have had, or Darren might have had, of like dragons being hatched, they're part of the vision or the image would have been like this bald boy. Even with Egg being grown up, he's still, images of him as a young bald boy might be represented in a dream. But that might also look like Dany when she hatched her dragons. And so I can easily see lots of these expectations or visions or whatever of hatching dragons were being juxtaposed by the dreamers and their interpreters with what Dany actually did. And there's no reason for for HBO to not want to tie in their original series.
Yeah.
You know, they will be elated if new people watching Dunk and Egg are then motivated to watch Game of Thrones because they tied in some reference to Dany. You know?
My question here is, like, do you think that there's a chance that we would see some of these visions and dreams, like how we're talking about seeing flashbacks,
actual scenes?
Actual scenes.
I was going to ask the
I
same
think
question.
they might even cut in scenes of Game of Thrones.
That's what we're saying, yeah.
Into the visions.
Yeah.
There might be like just images that already exist from the last
show
episode
Dany at the
of
fire.
Game of
Yeah,
Thrones.
show Dany walking into the fire.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
from
and a blurred
season 1.
out image from behind, you know.
Like
so,
like how they did in season 6, where Bran's having burned them all. Like that was of the past. Although the one maybe was of the future, of the dragon shadow over King's Landing. Like that exact thing could be in Egg's dream.
If there's like this rapid fire images, and some of them are kind of out of focus and from a weird angle, and super fans who know the story and watch Game of Thrones 8 times, they'll pause play, and get that image, be like, oh, but which will spark all kinds of discussion online. Every podcast will talk about it, and why would HBO not want that?
Yeah,
you know,
I agree. Yeah,
I'm laughing because, Sean, you just described one of my old most popular videos.
No.
the thing about my video, Pyres and Blood, the True Cause of the Tragedy of Summerhall. Basically, everything you just said is in that. It's I published this 4 years ago, I think, about something like that. But yeah, exactly. The idea of the uncertainty of dreams, the especially Dunk and Egg is one of the primary things I pulled from. Exactly what you're talking about, the uncertainty of Daeron's dreams versus what actually happens. I talked about that a lot in my House of the Dragon videos about this, where I talked about Aegon's dream and then Viserys's dream, and how like he thinks it's about one kid, but it's actually about the other, and what he thinks is like going to fight the others is probably going to is about Aegon rebelling and stuff like that. Yeah, exactly. You nailed a lot of the points. It's even down to the thing about Dany being bald after she comes out of the pyre. That was one of the things in my video where that was if you put Summerhall side by side with Dany, you get the same imagery. You get a pyre, you get eggs, you get fire, you get a king, and then you get somebody walking out of the flames with dragons. It's like you can definitely see how Aegon may have seen Dany and then been like, "That's me.
Yeah,
it's talking about me. I'm the one bringing him back."
That's me.
Exactly.
Egg.
Nailed it, Sean.
Man,
I didn't even need to make that video. You got it.
So that's a good segue into what are some scenes from the Hedge Knight that we're looking forward to on TV. What we've just imagined are scenes that aren't in the Hedge Knight that would make sense to fit in given these other topics we've raised and what we expect. What are some of our what we believe they're going to want to do, but things that we know are in there. Let's talk about that, and things that we're looking forward to, and things that are highlights like that. Obviously, dragons. Specifically, though, like we've said, there might be some in dreams. Not a huge number of locations. Decent sized cast, though, because it is a tournament. There'll be a lot of number of people there. There'll be a lot of extras doing sort of medieval stuff in the background, like hammering on some wood or slaughtering some animal or tanning some hide, or I don't know, armor, swords, and horses, things like that. So just some obvious ones. We've got a list of things here we'll run through. Folks, you chime in as well. Y'all watching in the video, in the comments. Chime in with the ones you think are going to be particularly excellent if you don't hear us say them. First sight of Ashford in the distance. With all the people gathered, the tourney grounds will have been constructed already. There'll be a lot of tents and pavilions and lords that have showed up to prepare. The interior of the castle should look pretty cool. Here's an example just from the text. After describing the distance between the Bracken and Blackwood tents, is like their tents are as far away from each other as possible. He goes on to note the following, quote,
Marbrand, Mallister, Cargyle, Westerling, Swan, Mullendore, Hightower, Florent, Frey, Penrose, Stokeworth, Daffy, Perrin, Wild. It seemed as though every lordly house of the west and south had sent a knight or three to Ashford to see the fair maid and brave the lists in her honor.
Daffy?
Daffy Duck.
Is that really Daffy?
House Daffy. That's a new one.
I never noticed.
Is that
Daffy.
maybe that should be Derry or something?
Maybe it should be It should be Derry. I was
That
like
sounds like
Daffy.
Derry.
It should be Derry. I thought that's why I was like. That's why I said it. Like, I was like, I don't think there's a Daffy.
I don't
but
think there's a house
it
Daffy.
definitely was pasted in here as Daffy.
Yeah.
Very funny.
Our
I can
ebook
say
has
that
a-
again
I don't
if
see
you
a
care.
house
But no, we'll
Daffy.
leave it. It's funny for people to be amused by, I suppose. I won't reread it. But yeah, I'm gonna fix it in our quote though.
This makes me think of Sir Dantos, where he's talking to Sansa after the Battle of the Blackwater, where the army of the West comes and smashes into Stannis from behind, and he's like, the banners! It's what I picture with this, like all those fancy houses that Shea listed, even the one that probably doesn't exist, like Daffy. And there's also Tully and Tyrell and Lannister and Baratheon. The Laughing Storm is going to be there. I mean, that huge man, like, what's he going to look like? That's going to be cool. So here's an example. We've got a description in a way that we can see some of these things being revealed to the audience. Maybe think of Podrick and Tyrion, where Podrick's naming all the banners as they come in. We've got kind of a similar moment here. Quote.
A large party of knights and mounted archers poured through the gates, 100 men at least, riding some of the most splendid horses that Dunk had ever seen. Some great lord has come. He grabbed the arm of a stable boy as he ran past.
Who are they?
The boy looked at him queerly. Can't you see the banners? He wrenched free and hurried off. The banners. As Dunk turned his head, a gust of wind lifted the black silk pennon atop the tall staff, and the fierce three-headed dragon of House Targaryen seemed to spread its wings, breathing scarlet fire. The banner-bearer was a tall knight in white scale armor chased with gold, a pure white cloak streaming from his shoulders. Two of the other riders were armored in white from head to heel as well. Kingsguard knights with the royal banner.
Yeah, we've got the Kingsguard there. I think that's either Donald of Duskendale or Roland Crakehall holding the banner. Those two are there during it, and there's a third one there as well. This is Joe. You've got a few ones listed here. What are some of your cinematic moments you're looking forward to?
Those should be really cool. All the banners and stuff like that should be awesome to see, especially because they put in a lot of detail in House of the Dragon in their tourney scene, putting in characters and houses that never showed up for the rest of the show so far.
Yeah.
Just like random ones in there just to make us happy.
Yeah,
so I'm assuming they'll do the same thing.
Yeah, like we were like,
it's like, what?
Oh,
A Bolton came to King's Landing? That's
that.
crazy.
Yeah.
And also the Stark that lost his face.
Yeah,
all that other kind of fun stuff.
Yeah.
Some of the good ones should be obviously Dunk absolutely decking Aerion Brightflame, protecting Tansel.
Yeah.
Very much a taking down the bourgeoisie by the common man. Love to see that. Take down the feudal lords. Him sitting underneath the tree and seeing the falling star become a sigil that you guys are all wearing. That's a very cinematic scene. That should make a very good like wide shot of that happening.
I agree.
Also Tansel making his shield. That's one of the cool things, that he carries around that sigil forever as an homage to her, and that he goes looking for her. You know, it's always reminding him. That should be a great one. I want to buy this too. They're definitely going to make a prop of it, and I want to buy it.
I'd love to see a scene like a Better Call Saul sort of scene, where they have almost like a little short story that it's been 3 or 5 minutes on some little image or moment or creation that then becomes a piece later in the episode. I don't know how many Better Call Saul fans are out there, but I wouldn't mind actually witnessing a couple moments of the painting process and the sword shield being built and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, that sounds good. I'm down for see that. I want to see that. Yeah, I like your calls here, Joe. And then I'm just looking forward to seeing the marketplace, just however they decide to design that.
That should be good.
I keep mentioning it, but I'm particularly looking forward to what they do for that.
Yeah, I brought it up at the beginning, but yeah, for me, it's the puppets. It's whether they do it as elaborately as I dream of, or not. We will see a puppet show, and it will be meta and cool. Like I will get that. But they could make it really.
You guys heard
epic.
it here. Ashea loves puppets.
I do. I mean, I actually
loves
do.
puppets.
You can,
big puppet
The Center
fan.
for Puppetry Arts is in Atlanta.
Yeah, I go to the Center for Puppetry Arts. I'd love going there.
Loves a
if
good
you
puppet.
were to look at my bookshelf, I have a stack of books about puppets in the Dark Crystal. I do actually think puppetry.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at old movies and TV shows that use puppets, and those age so much better than when they use like CGI and stuff. Physical puppets are better. So anyways, yeah, I do. You didn't hear it here first. You heard it here for probably the dozenth time, honestly. Like, it's not first at all.
First for me.
Joe,
I didn't pay attention.
Joe Magician, you picked a couple of
she's
a couple of good quotes here as well that are we're looking forward to seeing the way some good actor delivers these lines.
Oh, for sure. There's Darren the Drunkard, who actually they probably need to put a lot of good casting time to getting him right, because he's a hard character to portray.
I agree.
When they put him into the graphic novel, even the way they put him in there it didn't quite feel right the way they portrayed him.
Okay.
But he's a very subtle character, and his best line by far is, "My dreams are not like yours, Sir Duncan. Mine are true." And getting that one right, and how he's talking about them and how he's relating it to his internal angst, is something that's going to be really hard to pull off, and I hope they do well. Also, Steely Pate, he has a lot of good conversations with Dunk. He says, "What am I to them?" And Steely Pate says, "A knight who remembered his vows." Cinematic, Matt, right there.
People love that.
And of course, it's a really good one. And I think the one that they'll probably start the show off with, if they don't do your guys' good idea about Brienne reading the book, is obviously Dunk burying Sir Arlen. The way that's described in the Hedge Knight is it's so haunting, and the rain coming down, and he's trying to dig into it, and he's thinking about the loss of basically his father, because that's who Sir Arlen is to him. And going from that to the tourney, going from the extreme sadness he's feeling to the elation and going back into the world, there's a lot to it, and I can just sort of see it in my mind already, like the dark and the rain coming down and Dunk covered in mud. It should be fantastic.
Yeah, they'll maybe play up a little bit, and like he'll be maybe struggling if he's I don't know if they'll have him cry or have him like on the verge of tears or tears in the rain. Yeah, maybe you won't be able to tell if he's crying because it's raining. That's one of the reasons they do that sometimes.
Terrible day for rain.
I'm just wiping the water out of my eyes. It's not tears. So yeah, that could be really, really powerful. I agree. That's super, super interesting. And in that first scene, there's a line that helps set the tone. Presumably, they'll keep some of, if not all of, his monologue there, his eulogy. At least he lived to see another spring, because it's not actually cold anymore. The night he got a chill and died, but it wasn't from winter. And that's the kind of line that is a little more Westeros-y than than another spring isn't as big a deal in the real world. That's only 1 year, whereas this is several years potentially. Also, there's just mentions some places he's been to with him: Maidenpool, Gulltown, Ashford, of course. Sean, you've got your note here about what you look forward to seeing in flashback here.
Okay.
Yeah, I most look forward to seeing the true and 100% canon scene of Arlen knighting.
He'll remember it, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure he will.
Sure. We'll see that.
I like remember the moment from the book where Raymond Fossaway gets Dunk to come have a drink of wine with him. He's like, "Oh yeah, you're worthy. You can be with among us. Of course you are. You're a knight, And he's describing the sons of Maekar one by one. He's like, and the fourth son, well, and then Egg runs in the tent, and it's like, "Hey, I'm the fourth." He doesn't say that, obviously, but
that'll be a great moment.
Yeah, and he's like, "My brother is," or Daron. He doesn't say my brother. He says, "Arian's attacking the puppeteer," or whatever. And of course, the tournament itself, it could have some moments. That should be pretty spectacular. It's interesting to see that, like, all three shows will have a tournament pretty early on. House of the Dragon, episode 1. It won't be episode 1 in the Hedge Knight, but it will be probably episode 2 or 3. And I mean, there's a lot of jousting in this event. It's wild how long, like, it just goes into montage version at one point. He's just thinking about this many duels and this many jousts, and Humphrey Harding wins 14 jousts before facing Arion, who kills his horse and breaks his leg and all that stuff. So certain things will be more obvious. Like, I'm wondering how they're going to do that. The killing of the horse. Like, Daemon does that to Gawain Hightower in House of the Dragon. He doesn't kill the horse. He just kind of trips it, which is still a dirty trick. So I wonder if they'll be a little more graphic with this one. And but it'll be easier to tell, for example, that they soft play Valar, that they kind of lose to him on purpose. And, Dunk suspects it. It's in his inner monologue. But they're not going to do an inner monologue on a TV show. I don't think. I mean,
sure?
they do that. They do occasionally do that. It's unlikely.
Yeah.
I mean, I shouldn't be 100% sure they won't do that, but it seems unlikely.
This could be the one they do.
So you'll have him, like, noticing that this guy is... They'll be observed. Maybe he talks to some other person in the crowd. They'll be like, just some random person. He's like, well, that sure didn't look like he tried very hard there, Because we know that they're not trying to beat Valar. They want Valar to win, and it kind of reminds us maybe of how Rhaegar may have been soft-played in some spots before, even though he was actually capable. We don't actually know if Valar is a good warrior. We know Rhaegar was, but who knows? Anyway.
Also, the Knight's Tale, when the Black Prince was discovered and everyone surrendered to him.
Yeah. So
or they just let him win.
I see here, Guilty Undertaker says, Ron Howard to voice Dunk's inner monologue. I actually would love the idea if they actually did a narration monologue or something for the show. It would actually be very nice.
It's not. I'm struggling to come up with other examples, but I know there are a lot. The Wonder Years had it. Right now, Lucky Hank is doing that. So.
What, have narration?
Inner monologue.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's lots of shows that have inner monologue, for sure. I mean, depending on how they decide to do it. But yeah, there's definitely many, but generally, those are more comedic in tone for the most part. Because there's some exceptions, but it is generally, I would be surprised if they went that route for that reason, if they're trying to not lean into humor. The monologue is more for humor. I don't know.
Yeah. A couple of important lines here. Here's one that you like from Egg, right, Joe Magician?
Oh, yeah. He just starts screaming when Arion's in the joust. Kill him. He's right there. It's like, you okay, bro? What's going on, man?
That's our favorite thing that Egg does. It's not the only time that he yells something. He's like, kill him.
He's right there.
He's right there. Yeah, Egg has a few in like each of the short stories. I remember when we went through and we pointed them out, Sean, that...
I seem to remember there was even one time where he said, get him,
yeah.
instead of kill him.
Yeah, but like it's a frequent thing is
Arion,
egging Dunk on, like literally egging him on.
Especially against Arion.
Yeah.
Kill that bastard. I hate him.
Kill him.
All right, fair enough, Egg.
Another one that will be just really powerful is Dunk saying, are there no true knights among you? I almost got choked up saying it. It's going to be so good. And then what happens? Quote.
A black stallion emerged from out of the river mists. A black knight on his back. Dunk saw the dragon shield and the red enamel crust upon his helm with its 3 roaring heads.
So Baelor shows up. And it's like, whoa, man, Baelor's going to join. Wow. And, of course, at first, Dunk thinks it's Valar because it's Valar's armor. And, yeah, so they may play with that a little bit to make us not realize it's Baelor. Then, of course, the actual Trial of Seven. I mean, that's going to be pretty spectacular, I would think. They're going to have to show a lot more than we get to see because a lot of Dunk doesn't actually see much of what's happening around him because he's so busy with Arion. He starts off getting knocked off his horse and in the mud. Gets his head smacked by his Morningstar. So he's really, and he's got his, as this quote tells us right away, the helmet he's wearing makes it hard to see other things anyway. So us seeing it all as a whole, it's going to be a much different experience than this narrative POV style, which here's this quote to kind of frame that for us.
Prince Baelor was to his right and Ser Lionel to his left, but the narrow eye slit of the great helm limited Dunk's vision to what was directly ahead of him. The viewing stand was gone, and likewise the small folk crowding the fens. There was only the muddy field, the pale blowing mist, the river, town, and castle to the north, and the princeling on his gray charger with flames on his helm and a dragon on his shield. Dunk watched Arion's squire hand him a war lance, 8 feet long and black as night.
Arion standing over Dunk taunting him will give us some Oberyn Mountain vibes, especially given how big Dunk is. Except With a similar result. The person on the ground actually ends up winning, except we're actually rooting for that guy instead of the taunter. Yeah. That should be a lot of fun. Yeah, I can't wait for that. That's exciting. And you point out the ending as well is going to be really powerful too, huh?
Yeah, the ending conversation just between Maekar and Dunk, where he convinces him to let Egg come with him, talking about how he has spoiled his kids rotten, how Egg needs to see more of this world if he wants to be a better person. And it's very, very similar to Davos talking to Stannis. That's part that's like the specific conversations where he asks him to speak truth to him. To a guy like Maekar and Stannis are very, very similar people, as it were. And it's also you also get to hear the talking truth to power, which is usually something people get their tongues ripped out for in Westeros. And this like the special exception for Dunk, because he just is this good person and people listen to him who normally wouldn't. And I think that's a really powerful, and it'll be very cinematic when they show it.
Yeah, I agree. That's going to be really good. So let's move into some of the backfilling, some of the retcon stuff that should have really needed to be in the Hedge Knight, but George hadn't fleshed it out yet. Mostly Blackfire stuff. Let's get into some detail with that. I think one of the really easy ways to get started with that, which is kind of an odd thing that's missing from the Hedge Knight, is why does he have the nickname Breakspear? Usually you would explain why someone has a nickname. Like, where did he get that nickname? Even if it's just like one line or two. It's like, oh, he got that nickname because of this. But it's not explained. He's just Baelor Breakspear. And we find out later it's because he broke, with his brother's help. Maekar was the anvil and he was the hammer. Baelor was breaking the spear wall of the Black Dragon supporters during the Battle of the Redgrass Field. So that could be a very easy way to get into Blackfire discussions, is just someone talk about why he's called Breakspear. There's a number of things get explained, why people have certain nicknames or why people are this or that. Very straightforward way to broach the subject.
We did an episode on tournaments, and one thing we pointed out there was like how many and how quickly they get featured in all the books and the show, and in this one, like it'll be like there won't be a tournament in episode 1, but the whole season is pretty much just about this tournament, and one reason to have these tournaments is because you get this convergence of heroes and leaders and characters and this potential drama, but also because it's a really good excuse for what might otherwise be very contrived dialogue, to have one character talking to another character, pointing out and introducing all the other characters so that the audience learns who they are. A tournament is a very natural place for that type of conversation to happen. And so I can't see it being a background conversation between, some traveler in the crowd getting informed on what's going on, or Egg explaining it to Dunk. There's a lot of great potential in this tournament setting to fill in backstory.
Good point. Yeah. Joe Magician, you as well mention a little later here in our document. I'm skipping ahead a little. You mentioned the Bracken and Blackwood stuff as an example.
Yeah.
I could use that as a way to pivot to discussing long-running feuds or civil conflicts, because they're a good example of that, of two sides that hate each other, and that could pivot into a larger conflict that's in the recent past, like the Blackfire rebellions.
Oh yeah, and for sure, because House of the Dragon, minor spoiler, the Blackwoods and Brackens, they got the introduction at Storm's End because they're about to be a big part of the show. Not to say how. Don't worry, Sean, we're good. But they end up, that rivalry ends up being a big part of it. And that's something that should be here in this tournament, because as you said, the Blackwoods and Brackens are here. And we know that they ended up on separate sides of the Blackfire Rebellion. So as you're introducing the Blackfires, they are by far the most convenient way to demonstrate it, to give these characters names, to have them set up in opposition. Maybe have them being like little cliques during this, have it be a background thing that's going on, have Dunk involved, maybe foreshadow Village Hero if we ever get to that point.
I like that idea.
And especially, this is the one I really like, if they're committed to making sure that this connects the House of the Dragon, they could bring up Willem Blackwood and Gerald Bracken and their duel at Storm's End, and how that has become a very small thing at the time, but has become the thing of legends, the thing this feud is now based around. Justice for Willem, justice for Gerald, that kind of thing. Is that a certain will that be a part of this?
That's pretty cool, because as it stands, there was a recent not murder, but a killing of a Blackwood, an attorney, by the Otho Bracken, the Brood of Bracken, and that's something that immediately Dunk thinks of. So that you could just add that to the tail end of what you just said. Say this is the latest atrocity in that long-running feud that dates back to Gerald, and then before that, etc. So yeah, it's a really good idea, because you're totally right. There's a lot. It's not just them. The Brackens and Blackwoods represent a big part of the Great Bastards angle, who was obviously Blood Raven's a Blackwood, and Bittersteel is a Bracken. So that's huge, which brings us to the central missing thrust here. We've talked about the existence of some of these other characters in the Blackfire Rebellions, but Bloodraven is actually working in King's Landing at this point. He's not quite hand yet. He will be right after the story, so he will be for the second and third stories, but he's a war hero. King Daeron likes him. He already has Dark Sister. He already has the Raven's Teeth. I mean, the Raven's Teeth were at the were at the Redgrass Field, so he had them way back then. So he's been established for quite a while. So it'll be really interesting to see. I kind of doubt he'll appear, but he'll be talked about. But he might appear. They might show him at court. They might. Who knows what other scenes they'll show? What do you think? You think they'll show him? How do you think? I mean, certainly, eventually they will. But in this first season.
I think he'll show up during the season at some point, whether we're talking about flashbacks, whether we're talking about him physically there. I mean, they could always pull the Maynard Plum and have him show up in disguise, but there's no real point for that at this point, because he's not Spy Master. He's not Hand of the King. He's just an important guy at court. But remember, you talked about the quote about how the Kingsguard are here, all the princes are here. It'd be supernatural for Bloodraven to show up here along with the rest of the court, especially because we know him as a character. He keeps tabs on them. He watches the rest of the princes. He watches the next heirs to the throne. He shadows Egg all throughout the Mystery Night. So it'd be perfectly in character for him to be here, but in the background, more like a Lair Strong type. And then as they eventually build him up more, we learn about him more in the Sworn Sword, until he finally shows up in the Mystery Night as the fully realized Hand of the King that we know. Like, he's such an important character this time, and especially the Dunk and Egg stories. Like, Dunk thinks about him a lot. He's terrified of him. He remembers seeing him in King's Landing. There's a general shadow behind Bloodraven's wings that hangs over Westeros, and it starts in the Hedge Knight. This is when it should be starting, and it'd be great to see him have a character arc throughout the show, rather than just having him appear like George does in the Mystery Night.
Yeah, I think it's a great seed to plant in the first season. Like, even if he's not a featured character, at least have him on screen, say his name out loud.
Okay, let's go around. Let's do a little. Everyone weigh in. Say, do you think Bloodraven will be cast in season 1 or season 2?
I say yes, but as Maynard Plum. I say Maynard Plum will be cast in season 1.
I'll say season 2.
I think he'll be in it.
In flashbacks. I'm not. I'll say no for season 1.
I think it's a great idea. I don't think he'll be in season 1. I think it'll be I think it's a great idea, but I think they'll probably just want to wait to cast until they really, really use him. Even though I think it would be better off if they built him up as this is a POV character in this tale. I just don't.
I think they could foreshadow his presence by showing ravens, like a shot of a raven on a tree looking at Dunk or something like that.
That would be cool. They could do things like that.
Or watch
I think he'll be name dropped more than he would have been. Maybe brought up a lot. I think it would be cool if they had episodes. If they had arcs where we see what's up in King's Landing and elsewhere, and we see Shiera Seastar, we see all these things. I think that would be great. I don't know if I think 6 episodes is what gives them that much extra time. I think it'll be there.
So you are a yes on that, Joe Magician?
I think they will, mostly because, again, as we were saying early on, the Hedge Knight they're probably going to be looking for things to include to get to 6 episodes if they're doing full hour long like they do for the regular thing. And This is not only just for Bloodraven, but again, she or Sea Star, but also maybe Egg's sisters, Dale and Ray. Or are we talking about the rest? If they're going to bring the Blackwoods more into focus, that could be a way that you bring in Bloodraven.
I think seeing more family life, but I think they would hold back the big casting of certain characters. But seeing Egg and his sisters or something I think that would actually be a great way to show some backstory and show Targaryens.
What if we saw Mia or Gwenys or both of them, Bloodraven's sisters?
Yeah, exactly.
Totally.
Those would be great.
That'd be cool. They're
the other thing is
Sean
Sean, you were talking about the need for a character to give exposition. Boy, isn't that Bloodraven? Imagine if he was standing there telling everybody about what was going on. Yeah. If he was a knowledgeable guy in the crowd and Dunk didn't recognize him, but Egg did, that would make it even more interesting.
That's cool. I like it. Yeah, so this is really good. There's just some good ideas. You all can see how there's so much to play with here, and there's so many ways for them to introduce these characters. Someone's got to mention, they may not even mention Bittersteel. I figure they will, but it's far more important to mention Bloodraven and Daemon and maybe Shiera.
And it's another example of how George might contribute to the writing. They may say, George, we think it's too out of nowhere for Maynard Plum and Bloodraven to come up 3 years later. We want to plant that seed now. How can we do it? And he comes up with a way to have a conversation with Maynard Plum, or whether Egg recognizes.
Yeah, or he says, they ask him that, and George says, oh, well, at that time, Bloodraven was really busy doing this, and he tells them a little bit of context about personal things going on in his life and at court, and then they're like, oh, that's a perfect little tale. So I think that, to be clear, I want this. I think it would be good. I think it would be better for the story. I think it's good. I just am skeptical. If I have to land on one way or another, I think I'm going with Aziz and saying I don't think it'll be season 1.
Yeah, I think they'll just talk about him and allude to him without actually showing him.
Yeah.
Don't worry. When I'm hired, I'm going to push for this. I'm going to get it right in the show. And the other reason to put in Bloodraven is there's a long-run conspiracy that he has been engineering the Targaryen line to make it so that certain people end up king. Now, if they want to lean into that, this is one of the primary things that people talk about. There's been some very simple things that, he had been trying for a while to get Maekar's line onto the throne because for some, I don't believe this one, but this is a popular theory out there that he's been not only trying to get the Blackwoods in power, but maybe this is a dream sort of thing, where prophetic thing, where Bloodraven of the future is looking back and trying to manipulate things. And I've heard some really crazy theories that's oh, well, he skin changed into Maekar and he swung the mace to kill Baelor and then he erased his memory. I swear. I'm not making this up. People have said this to me on Reddit and YouTube.
Yeah.
Someone else made it up. But there's definitely a real sense that because of his supernatural nature and the increased focus on dreams, especially in the Hedge Knight, that he should really represent a more supernatural angle to this, more than just being the spy master, more than just being the hand of the king. Especially if they're going to tie this into more of the main Game of Thrones, you really want to start as they're ramping up this background supernatural stuff. That's him. And how much influence he has now versus how much he has later is definitely something they could try to connect.
I agree. Well said. Good said, Joe Magician.
Another
angle to the Bracken Blackwood stuff, although it's really more directly Bracken at this point. Of course, they're needing to be set up not just as their roles here, but their role in Aegon the Unworthy's court was huge. They had a hand of the king, Bracken, and of course the two different Bracken women that were lovers of the king, and the Brackens fought for Daemon. So there's the idea that they had been trying to take the throne for a while because they were trying to manipulate Aegon IV to set aside Daeron. They were probably part of that. They were probably part of the Sir Morgul Hastewick accusation they fought the Dragon Knight. That was obviously Hastewick was a cat's paw. Someone willing to fight the Dragon Knight's not an easy thing to do, but that guy was willing somehow.
But was it Bloodraven? Oh. Was Hastewick Bloodraven in disguise?
That would be interesting. I think that happened in 175. I think that happened the year before Bloodraven was born, so probably not.
He can time travel, man. Don't worry about it.
I forgot about the time travel. Of course he can do that, yeah.
People always forget A Song of Ice and Fire is a time travel story. It totally is.
Yeah, it totally is.
I totally forgot that.
Yeah.
Too much time has passed. That's why you forgot. So yeah, so we agree. There's so many ways for them to bring in this stuff. There's so many avenues to insert the Blackfire stuff through Bracken, Blackwood,
I think
other rivalries.
That a shirt, a sigil shirt that would piss a lot of people off would be a Brackfire shirt.
Brackfire.
Everyone would hate it.
Oh my god.
That really Brackfire.
Could it be Brack?
Are there Bittersteel fans?
Yeah, Brack
Do they
should be
exist?
Brack.
I'm a Bittersteel fan. I have a Bittersteel shirt already.
I gotta go. I'm sorry, guys.
Aziz has a Bittersteel shield. I could bring it out.
I have a shirt and shield. Yeah,
Aziz has a huge
My God.
Bittersteel shield.
It's because I'm so bitter.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to cancel you, Aziz.
I've been canceled. I'm sorry, guys. Gotta go. Been canceled. So yeah, that's pretty big. Now, speaking of these other characters, there's the way they're portrayed. There's the way we perceive them. There's the way we read them. But the reality of them being cast, it doesn't always quite work out the way we want or expect because of, well, there aren't an infinite number of actors who look the way we need them to look for these roles. But so I'm curious how they're going to do some of these things. We all seem to agree, Joe Magician, we haven't heard you weigh in on this, but the three of us seem to agree that not only do we want Egg and Dunk to be unknowns, it seems likely because of cost and because they're going to be young, so it's just less likely they're established anyway, because young folk, it's less likely they have a big career, a big resume of acting already when you're young. Is that just kind of how
it's
we're
one of those things where a lot of people tend to do fan castings and they pick famous people because that's who they know. You don't know the random guy that's doing great on on the London stage or something like that. So a lot of these guys come out of nowhere, but that's sort of the nature of it. I trust their casting department. They tend to do a good job, better than I would ever do. Although I will say Ryan Cora's Dunk. Just bring him back. He did great as Harwin Strong, connect the Strongs and Dunk.
That'd be much older for when they recast it in 10 years for the continuation ultimately.
Because
again, I want to remind you all, even if they age him up, let's say they age him up a little bit, but in the books, Dunk starts the series, he's 16 or 17.
Yeah.
He's very young. He's baby. He's huge, but he's a baby.
Yeah, he'll probably be less huge.
They might make him 20 or 21 or something in the show version, but he's still young.
But even someone that's 20 or 21, like you're saying, right now, there aren't a lot of famous 20-year-olds. And even if they cast them right now, they're not going to start filming right now. I'm guessing it's going to be months at least before they start casting, months after that before they start filming.
Yeah.
And so, maybe they age Dunk up to 20 or 21. Maybe they even cast an actor that's 25 that can pass for 21. But there still aren't a lot of famous 7-foot-tall 25-year-olds.
I can't.
It's going to be
the
a
only
challenge.
ones I know
But
I'm
kind of with you, Joe. I do. My inclination is to trust them because I think they've done great in the past with the casting. That said, I do have a list of my dream casting in the document here.
Could I show you all how I think it will be cast? I'm gonna put it on the screen for everyone to see. Here we go. That's it.
5 different Henry Cavills. If you're not watching,
Henry Cavill is Duncan the Tall. Henry Cavill is Egg. Henry Cavill is Rohan Weber. Henry Cavill as Ben as the Brown Shield, and then old Henry Cavill as Eustace Osprey. Anyways,
that Lady Rohan looks a little bit like you. That Henry Cavill.
That's exactly what Naomi said to me when I sent that to her. She was like, "I thought that was you for a second." I was like, "I don't see it at all, but sure, thanks. That's nice. I look just like Henry Cavill as a woman. I appreciate it. I guess."
That Henry Cavill's so hot right now.
He's so hot. He even looks good as a Shea. It's amazing.
I just want also to share to that the Egg and the Rohan was like, "Oh, congratulations on his transition."
That's the real reason he left The Witcher.
Yeah.
It's like, no, we need a man for this role.
But that is
we
what
respect
it feels.
your transition, but the Witcher's a man.
But no, that is how I feel sometimes in the fandom when I hear Henry Cavill named.
Yeah, they're
like, "Oh,
he's Aegon the Conqueror, he's Daemon Blackfire, he's Dunk. It's like, what? Jesus.
The woman from the Viking show.
Oh yeah,
what's her name? Everyone casts her as a Targaryen. It's like
Catherine Winnick.
Catherine
Everyone loves
Winnick.
her
It's
as Visenya. Everyone loves that.
You can dye people's hair. You don't have to pick the only people you know who are blonde.
But she's already blonde though. You don't have. No, I'm just kidding. She's got a black belt.
Emilia Clarke looks nothing like Daenerys.
No.
But now she is.
So something that's a tried and true TV show method of getting a new show launched, even if it's an established show, is you have someone who's gonna die as a big name. There's countless examples of this. So Baelor Breakspear could be an established actor. Like, that's someone that could be Henry Cavill. That's at least more appropriate for age, because that would be around the right age. Because Baelor's like 39. I think Henry Cavill's 36 or 37. Yeah, or Valar. Yeah, so those are good examples. Sir Arlen, someone who's already dead, that you hear his voice in flashbacks.
Arlen?
Like, yeah, Sir
That's the most ridiculous.
What if he dresses up as Geralt and shows up as Sir Arlen and he just dies in his uniform? It's like, oh no, he was a Witcher, but he was Sir Arlen too.
In my little list of dream casting, I feel like they're probably not going to get all these people, and some of them are pretty famous people.
Let's hear your list.
Man,
Sean.
I would love it.
Yeah.
But I will say though, I couldn't think of someone for Baelor. I couldn't think of someone like that's Baelor. Like, yeah.
He has to be incredible.
But I think
it has to be.
Wait,
It's a
before
tough
you read your
casting, too.
list, I'll say one thing. Yeah. Sean named Dan Stevens as an option for Baelor, and Dan Stevens was actually brought up in the chat as an idea. Someone's a casting idea for Bloodraven.
Wait, who is that?
That's David Haller, Legion. That is Legion himself. He's also been in Downton Abbey, and he's been in other things. I don't know. He's been in a million things, but to me, he will always be David Haller from Legion. That is his iconic role. I literally have
a good show.
Many posters of that in my line of sight off camera right now of him. I'm looking at his face right now. So I appreciated that it was brought up twice, but also I just want to say before Sean says any of these castings, I hate so many of them because they are all such big names. They are everything I hate about fan castings. But go ahead, Sean. Now that I have like disclaimed that and said I do not
give this a shot,
I do not
Sean.
Sign off on this, but like you do you.
They were mostly big names, which again
daggers.
might be bad because they might carry this weight with them that doesn't fit the characters or takes people out of it. Maybe if there's enough, that wouldn't happen. I don't know, but I was trying to think of people who would fit it well. I think Timothée Chalamet could do Daron. I think he's the right age, would look good in a blonde wig, and he's a great actor.
Daron's not supposed to be blonde.
Looks good in a blonde,
by the way.
Yeah.
Okay. Everything because he's handsome as hell.
So, more on that in a minute. So about the hair thing.
Yeah,
I want to talk about hair color
because that's a fact with Baelor too. Yeah. So Tim Roth could be Arlen. I thought he would fit that well.
Okay.
Dave Bautista could be the Laughing Storm.
Oh, that's awesome.
Brett Goldstein from he's doing a bunch of stuff at Ted Lasso right now. He could be Maekar. He's a very like gruff, stern, serious actor. And Phil Dunster, also from Ted Lasso, could be Arian because he plays this like cocky jerk, self-centered, hotshot kind of guy. Tom Holland could be Raymond Fossaway. Tom Hardy could be Roland Crackhall.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's a bit small role for him. But
I'm a little shaky on this one, but I think that Anthony Starr might be a good Bloodraven as Homelander and The Boys. He does a good job of like on the surface being this hero kind of like good guy, but beneath that there's this dark menacing character. So he's a potential. Also down the road, but Barry Keoghan, he's been in a bunch of stuff, including Chernobyl and Banshees of Inisherin. He could be Glendon Ball.
I will tell you, I think Barry would be a very good Glendon Ball in a lot of ways. Other than that, there's some physical aspects to Glendon Ball that, like, I don't know. I care about him not. Barry is a little bit slimmer than I think of for Glendon, I suppose.
Bulk up.
He can bulk up, I guess. And Anthony Starr is a little bigger than I picture for a Bloodraven.
I think so too.
For that.
Also, I don't think Bloodraven ever tries to seem as a good guy. He tries to be menacing at every opportunity.
Anthony Starr can do that.
He rolls through fear. Yeah, he wants to intimidate people. Yeah, he likes that. He leans into it.
But I was also thinking of someone who could pass as Manor Plum too, and I don't even know if Anthony Starr could do that, but that's something you need for that character. So.
That's cool. Yeah, right on.
I got one for Baelor.
Yeah.
Pedro Pascal, bring him back. Recast him.
Just bring Harry Lloyd back for Arian.
Be really good.
Harry Lloyd would be a good Arian, but I think it'd be too confusing to viewers.
Yeah, I know. I do.
That was one thing I wanted them to do for House of the Dragon was to reuse a lot of Game of Thrones actors. Bring them back. Give them another job, especially for these one-off characters you're never going to see
History
again.
repeats itself.
Cool.
Yeah. Like Daron, so let's talk about Daron and a few things like about appearance.
About appearance. Well, what I would like to point out for all of these castings, assuming they cast the Danes as non-white because they're trying to, not cast people as white, as we were just talking about, they might want to lean into, hey, the Dornish. Again, they can go multiple ways with the Dane. They have Tencel, but like if they want to go that direction, literally Maekar's wife, Deanna Dane, is not white then. And then all of these kids should be mixed. We should be looking at fan casts that are mixed race. Like, even when they look really white, they shouldn't just be white. Like, Daron and Egg, like, all of these kids, in my opinion, if I think strongly that they should lean in.
That would be a way to do it, for sure.
And, like, like, we have only seen a few Danes, not enough that they can not have, that they are stuck doing one or the other. Like, they could choose what they want to do.
We've literally seen 0, right?
We have seen Arthur Dane.
No Danes have showed up.
We've seen Arthur Dane.
It's not Arthur? Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
But, like,
I forgot.
Arthur Dane
I'm a bad fan.
he wasn't not white, but he also wasn't the whitest guy in the world either. You know, like, I mean, like, when you look at him, it doesn't, and it's generations later, and there's other branches. Yeah. So I think that they should go the Velaryon route. Ultimately, and say, hey, what major houses can we write as being people of color? Oh, Dane makes perfect sense. And then, well, what's the butterfly effect of that? Well, that means that, like, the cascade effect means that, oh, well, now Egg is a little bit like I don't know.
He doesn't have to look all the way. Yeah, absolutely.
So
that which leads us to the hair color discussion. I think for example, they went with silver hair for Rhaenys in House of the Dragon, where in the book she's got black hair to be Baratheon. Now that was also, she's a little older, so arguably they're just trying to keep it simple. Here, though, I don't know if they should keep it simple because it actually matters, because part of the prejudice against Baelor's side of the family is that they look Dornish, and a lot of people don't like the Dornish. So this is like when Criston Cole took his helmet off, Alicent immediately recognized him as Dornish. Like, oh my God, he's Dornish. Like, from his appearance, she knew. It wasn't from his name. It was, that guy looks Dornish. He's Dornish. So they've already laid this groundwork of being a distinct, like, Dornish people have a look.
I guess that's a good point too, that, like, if they are specifically trying to emphasize the difference between the Martells and the Danes, that would be a point to make. Okay, well, all the kids of Mariah Martell, yes, that's still the same thing, that those are mixed race, but that if we're trying to show the xenophobia and racism of it, that, like, then the Danes should be the white Dornish in that like, if you're trying to lean into that, then Egg wouldn't be. Like, that's a good counterpoint for but still the point remains that some of the Targs, Stony Dornish, the white Dornish is Stony Dornish versus Sandy, which is what, and Salty as well, the three types. But I think that's still the point remains that there would be mixed race Targaryens.
Yeah, Baelor's with that black hair.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, with a little silver streak or whatever, but still have the purple eyes, and so is
Valar too.
And Valar has a longer, has a dark star thing going. I think his silver streak is bigger, and and Bittersteel has dark hair, not black. I think it's brown, but and like we said before, Daron doesn't have blonde hair. He has sandy brown. Like, his hair is like normal brown,
like a muddy brown.
So. They might go black just to keep it simpler, but still have a different hair color. So, like, some of them have black hair, some of them have just the standard Targaryen. So rather than a whole variety, there's just two, silver or black.
We also have no idea what Rey and Daella look like.
Yeah, we don't. We have no idea. Yeah, so that could be interesting.
But with Dane Mother,
and they're important too, because that's how we get the Targaryen blood in Stannis and Robert, Egg's children. That's the connection there. So, very important. And. But someone like Aerion, you would think he would look very Targaryen. I mean, he's supposed to. There's no reason to think they would do that differently, other than this possible Dane heritage that they may decide to fiddle with.
I wonder if he'll be a long-haired or medium-haired Targaryen.
He's supposed to have long hair. They might keep that, but maybe they'll change it for some reason. I feel like they're going to really lean into his Targaryenness, Aerions.
I would love it if Aerion actually didn't have platinum blonde hair, but he dyed it that way.
Wow, that's clever.
That he's so into being a Targaryen, he's like, I'm nothing like my Dornish past.
And they haven't.
That'd be such an Aerion thing to do.
They haven't been doing the eye color for anyone, so I think that's just still off the table. They probably just won't bother with that. Like, we're well past that. Like, no one has purple eyes, so that's just.
So let me ask, because I thought quite a bit about this, whether or not I was thinking more about Baelor, and I wasn't thinking about how, like, emphasizing the Danish background could open up more casting choices and put another element of social prejudices into the show, which I think it would be good and interesting for them to do. And maybe with 6 episodes, that's part of what they could do. But my default thought was, just for the average person watching a show, they just are going to make all the Targaryens be silver-haired. That's my default assumption.
I think it's not unlikely.
They don't want to confuse the audience.
I think it's not unlikely, yeah. I think there's a very good chance they just do that. Yeah, they're just like, screw it. They're all silver-haired, and that'll keep it simple, yeah.
I don't know if I would begrudge them if they did that. I don't think I want that, but I almost I think it would be better for the show in a way. And so I kind of expect them to.
I bet there's been if they're not coming, they've had these debates like in the back of production.
Yeah.
Like, what are we gonna do with these hair colors? Like,
I think if they chose to keep it all silver haired, then they would lean harder into the
skin
being
color
darker
thing.
skin.
Agree.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what they did with Velaryon.
Yeah.
You're totally right.
Yeah.
Like that
So,
was because it was almost like a substitute for the purple eyes because they don't have that.
Yeah.
So a skin color's a lot more obvious than eye color. It's pretty hard to see eye color from a distance. Like,
hey, if they could find a way to cast Donald Glover, I'm all about it.
Donald Glover. Heck yeah. He's a Glover.
Yeah.
He has. He could. Yeah, I mean, he could still be in there.
I'm like, I'm like picturing Donald Glover as like, what is he, a Baylor Breakspear? Who are you picturing him as? I'm like,
Bloodraven. Make him Bloodraven. That'd be funny.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we don't. I mean, we've seen some Blackwoods, but yeah, you can't help but also think about like when they talked about how they chose to make the Velaryons black. They said they talked about other houses, like what if they did it for Hightower, or what if they didn't jump to that's the one for sure. They talked about it.
Velaryons
and thought
just
about
fit really well.
It fit really well. But yeah, the idea that if they did that to another house, what house they could do it to. I think ultimately, I don't think they could do it with Brack and Blackwood because there's too much we've seen of them.
Yeah.
And
well, they'll be hamstrung by the casting they're doing now too.
Yeah, that's true. All right, let's move it.
I'm also just thinking this is kind of unrelated, but as a Reddit mod for A Song of Ice and Fire, just hearing this conversation is giving me just like war flashbacks from the Velaryon conversation.
Oh, God.
My God, am I not
hell.
looking forward to those flame wars?
Yeah.
So many people
the groundwork
just
is laid. They're
losing their minds over that one.
It's like, geez, y'all.
Yeah, it's so woke. Right, whatever.
Yes. So let's talk a little bit about some actual dreams and how some of these might manifest. We've talked about how other cinematic moments and obviously off and on the dreams have come up quite a bit, but let's try to focus on it a little bit for this being our last section of the episode. So a big difference in moving to TV, as always, is the shift away from POV style. So that just presents things in a different way. And with dreams, that's particularly important because dreams are always difficult to show. You're kind of showing directly someone's POV if you're showing a dream. Like that's really is about as in their head as you ever get in a TV show is showing someone's dreams, unless there's a narrator speaking their inner monologue, which, as we've said, is possible for this, but there's no reason to assume it will happen. But what if they do? If they do have that as a dream thing, like someone talking over something like that, or like a narrator, it would be odd to have a narrator considering George has had so many things away from narrator, but they could do a little bit of narration like they did at beginning of House of Dragon. That was like 3 paragraphs of narration. Something like that could happen. We've talked about the possibility of flashbacks.
Song of Ice and Fire is POV based. You hear the characters' thoughts all the time. That's been one of the things that kind of made their writing a lot harder, especially for characters who are so inside their own heads, like Jon Snow, where it's like people just sort of think of Jon in the show as just sort of a glum guy who's always looking very stern, but you read his internal POV, and of course he has a rich inner life, but you can't show that because that's not how Jon portrays himself. And that could be a really good thing for the Hedge Knight, because Dunk, even though he's thick as a castle wall and he's Dunk the Lunk, I mean, he adds a lot to the story about what he's thinking about, what he's paying attention to. And also George uses a lot of dramatic irony by hiding things behind Dunk's ignorance.
And Dunk is also sharper than he gives him credit for. There's a difference between being ignorant and being unintelligent.
Yeah, he's
right,
naive.
Exactly.
But he's perceptive, but doesn't have all the information.
I think narration, inner monologue, I think hearing Dunk's thoughts would be better.
It might be. I mean, I'm sure they're looking ahead at all the things he's done and all the challenges and being like, well, because it's once they commit to it, they might. I mean, they could back out of it. There's lots of shows that started with a narration and then changed their mind. Like, what's that show? Fresh Off the Boat. They had the main character, Eddie. The actual character was based on, the actual person that this young version was based on was the narrator for his inner thoughts. But they dropped it after season 1. The show went 6 seasons, but they only did his narration for the first season. They decided they didn't like it or it wasn't working, or I don't know why, but they dropped it. So it's not like, it isn't necessarily something they're stuck with if they decide to do it, but I'm sure they would rather not change midstream.
Can I say something in the chat where people were talking about like people were still on talking about opportunities for more diversity and casting and all that, and Lolatov said Steely Pate from Yee and just the general idea of like blacksmith, like the idea like that is one good role. Like we were just talking about cohort and like their and all that. So like I'm just thinking about their different technologies. So anyways, didn't think about that. I really like the idea.
Well, yeah, that's part of what I was getting at with talking about how the market could be really exciting.
Yeah.
There's a lot of opportunity for showing non-Westerosi stuff, or like that's a great example. Some armor, Staley Pate could be some other name.
Yeah, maybe not Pate.
Change his name from Pate to whatever ET would be. I don't know.
Steely Mysaria. But for the dream POV thing, actually, I was thinking about this when I was writing my pages and pages of notes for this, and Ashaya, you brought it up. I think Legion, the show, would be a really good thing they could lean on. For that show had a very interesting visual style for how they showed Legion's inner life and the dreams and how it was all interacting. If they really leaned to that part to show it, that'd be a lot more interesting. They tried it with Bran once. They showed us his dreams, and it was just a series of flashes that were basically incomprehensible, which makes sense, but if you want it to be more narrative, then copying from Legion would be a good start.
Aziz has a cat for
Can't
a
argue
second.
with that.
Just to tell everyone, Casanova has been on my lap on this stream twice, and now Aziz's.
Legion was very creative in how it presented a lot of aspects, but including like stuff in people's minds and dreams
and like
stuff.
and false memories, and not
exactly.
Yeah.
The misinterpretation, the changing of meanings, the visualizations constantly flipping back and forth. Like they did a really good job with that. And I think that would work for George's conception of prophetic dreams, especially like seeing Daron's dreams and having it be like that. Oh, that'd be perfect.
That's a great idea. Yeah. And for just imagining how they could tie this into the way Aegon's dream was described to us in House of the Dragon, just a little bit of that to connect that dot. It doesn't need to go too deep with that, but just something to tie the dreams from this era to the dreams of that era to the dreams of A Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones. So, another
especially,
one. Go ahead.
Also, real quickly, I get a ton of comments on my dream videos of people like, why couldn't they understand it? Why didn't they just know what it meant? And it's like, because they don't show it correctly. They show the person saying it. That you really need to see what they're seeing for the point to get through that these are super uncertain.
Yeah, their interpretation of the dream is not necessarily correct. They may have just, I thought that was a raven.
It's just images.
A raven. That was it was a Rorschach blot. It was an ink blot. It was it was a crow, not a raven. Are you kidding me? Those are so different. Yeah. Dreams and flashbacks, establishing that as a thing would enable them to not show certain things, which would be telling. Like if Dunk has no memory of being knighted, if there's no flashback of that, then that would be kind of a way of showing that it didn't happen, assuming it didn't happen, which I'm, that leeway is purely for Sean's benefit.
Literally Sean and Sean alone.
So like if he has a memory of being dubbed by Sir Arlen, it's like, well, that tears it. He was knighted, unless it's a false memory. That'd be kind of a weird thing to do. But it would really fool the audience in the opposite direction of the way the books tend to push us. So, but that would be a clever way to do it.
I would really like it if they showed Arlen lifting his sword and then cutting before you actually see any of it. So the audience will draw the inference that he got knighted, but you never see it. The old, there's no body there, nobody's dead. If you didn't see the knighting, did it happen?
Yeah, was that actually Dunk about to be knighted, or was he knighting someone else?
I do like the idea that Dunk really was knighted, or at least that he believes he was. Maybe Arlen did it wrong, or some ceremonial factor that made it not count in some technical way, or maybe even Dunk kind of knows that, but it was close enough that he can accept it. But one way or the other, I like that it's ambiguous. I think George is clearly making ambiguous whether it happened or not, and I hope the show does that too. I would be disappointed. I think I would feel a bit of justification for sure, but still be disappointed if they actually showed him be knighted by Arlen.
So, if we're talking about other dreams and things that might come up, like if they want to set up the long term, they could have Egg having some sort of dream. They could have him having a wildfire dream or something just early on to get that going, just to plant that seed. Remember the quote we started the episode with? Aemon said, "The dreams of dragons killed his brothers." Like, he clearly wasn't being completely literal. I mean, this isn't like Nightmare on Elm Street. You know, Elm Street. Dunk's tree is an elm.
I see what you did there.
Because Daron died of an STI, and Aerion died from drinking wildfire, not dreaming about it, and Egg died of burning of wildfire during the destruction of Summerall, something like that. So, but it's the dreams of dragons that caused them to act the way they did. And alcohol. Right. Like, alcohol in Aerion's case directly, because he was drunk when he drank wildfire, and Daron was an alcoholic because of his dreams tormenting him, and he was trying to block them out or what have you. So that is a big deal. That's a huge thing for them to develop these characters and show how these different Targaryens are dealing with this burden of the dragons being gone, and how it wasn't that long ago, and how things like the Blackfire Rebellion happened because the one side didn't have dragons to prevent that sort of thing from happening in the first place. No one's going to you're a lot less likely to rebel when you don't have dragons than they do. Let's put it that way. And so there's a lot of ways for them to set this up and to tie it into what Aemon has said without them being literal dreams. But the literal dreams are there too, right? We have to have that element, like what's pushing them to do these things that later causes their deaths. So I think no better time than the start when we actually have all those characters. Because in the second story, there's no Daron, there's no Aerion, they're not there. They're not in the third one either, right? They're doing their own things. Aerion gets exiled. So it's almost like they have to do this now, unless they make substantial, maybe they won't be as substantial as I think, because you can show scenes elsewhere. I don't know. You could have Aerion, and you could show scenes of Aerion.
John the Fiddler has the same stuff.
Yeah, John the Fiddler has dreams as well. So that can all tie together. But you can see my point here that it's kicking off the series. They want to inspire people to think ahead about it. They want to connect the dots, and it'd be hard to do that later when these characters aren't even in the second and third seasons, probably.
Yeah, for sure.
I hadn't even thought about that too much. Oh, sorry. I hadn't even thought about that too much, but that is a good point, that some of these things we might want to see set up or followed up on, they're not going to be in the second story. So, like, even if they did, like, give us Bloodraven in the first season, and the second season came out 1 year later, and the third season came out 1 year later, that's still 2 years of some, I was thinking maybe they introduced him as Maynard Plum, but that's still asking the audience a lot. To remember that some random background character in disguise is actually the Hand of the King that's showing up now, which makes me wonder if, and maybe another reason why George might get writing credit, if they do intend to have other storylines thread throughout the novels as we know them. If they have some long-term plan for Bloodraven or Travels of Dorne or something else, permeate all the stories. Maybe it does jump around a little bit more like Game of Thrones, where we do get King's Landing glimpses at the same time that we follow Dunk,
Here's a quote from the Mystery Knight that is particularly relevant, that ties into all this, and maybe it gives us a little more to work with.
Someday the dragons will return. My brother Daron's dreamed of it, and King Aerys read it in a prophecy. Maybe it will be my egg that hatches. That would be splendid.
And of course, Dunk's like, would it? It's like he's doubtful there. So
Dunk's like, hey, man.
The way this is
dragons
written,
are bad.
Yeah, the way this is written is part of why I'm pretty confident that Egg's dreams aren't prophetic, because he's like, his brothers dreamed of it. The others eventually have dreams of dragons. That doesn't mean, again, touching back on what I said earlier, that doesn't mean that they're prophetic. Only Daron's are confirmed prophetic, rather than just things you see in your dreams at night. But Egg could have had them later in life. This is early on. Like, we see how Aerys' insanity built over time, and I'm not saying Egg goes insane, but he certainly makes some odd decisions, and that may argue for some insanity. So that might want to be, they might want to set that up too. Maybe something he says. Maybe he says a line that reminds us of Aerys, something like that. We're like, whoa, that's startling.
Or Viserys. Viserys' one dream.
Ooh, yeah, he has that one, or something like that. Or maybe he's trying. Maybe he does something like Viserys, where he's like, "Is this prophetic?" Like, he's questioning himself,
and he wants it to be. Because Daron has them.
Because he does want it to be. You're right. Like, this is clearly, he does want it to happen. He's like, he saw it in a prophecy. Wouldn't that be splendid? So yeah, he's all for it. So something that's really interesting they might try to tackle here is why. are there so much dragon dreaming going on in this era? This is kind of a low magic era. There's no dragons, but there's a lot of dreaming and a lot of dreaming of dragons specifically. We got John the Fiddler. We got Bloodraven. We've got Daron the Drunkard, maybe other characters. That's a lot. I mean, and
maybe it's because there aren't dragons that there are dragon dreams.
Absolutely, which is exactly what I'm getting at. Like maybe they'll talk about that.
Danny has them.
Yeah. So there'll be evidence of, or suggestion of that being the reason, potentially. Like it's the fact that they're gone is a reason why they're dreaming of them more. And
also, it might be that we just are more aware of it because we're getting these stories. Other time periods might have also had more dragon dreams, but maybe George is giving us these stories because they take place at the time when the dragon dreams are there. You know, it could be a mix of cause and effect.
And touching on another topic we raised earlier, why is wildfire such a common element to these dreams? Are they dreaming of Aerys in the future? Are they dreaming of Daenerys and somehow combining that, crossing the stream somehow? Why does Aerion and Egg and others like Aerys in the future get obsessed with wildfire? Why did they insert it in place of dragonfire as like an ingredient here? What leads them to that decision? Is it visions? Is it something written? That's something they can tackle, maybe not in the Hedge Knight, but maybe start to tackle it in the Hedge Knight as they build it up.
They can at least approach it, but the source of them is really hard to figure out. Why are they coming from? Where are they coming from? Are they even real? Are they being sent by Bloodraven? Are they being sent by Bran? Are like the fact that they seem to be untethered from the existence of dragons again leads you to the idea of like, George, what you doing with these, buddy? Where do you think these are coming from? And in particular, the wildfire idea. Bookshelf Stud years ago came up with a really good idea that I based my Pyres and Blood video on, the ripples in the dreamscape idea, which he basically perceives time, which George has used this metaphor as well, as like a river or an ocean. And as one thing happens, it can go backwards and people can perceive it. And that may be what's going on here, that Dany's hatching of the dragons is so important that all of her family sees it, that it ends up being such a critical moment in time, that kind of thing. But also when you're talking about like where they come from and who exactly has them, the one thing I thought about in the past is that he's using these to inform all the other eras that he hasn't written about, because you can find patterns in characters like Daron, patterns in character like Aerys and Aerion. Look at the other Targaryen monarchs, it's like they're all doing the same thing. It's just they weren't recorded, and that was one of the arguments about like why Viserys's dream was I think probably true in the books as well. And Aegon's dream, it's like they don't tell people about these things, they keep them to themselves, but you can always see how they're reacting to things that don't really seem to be there. And that seems to be one of the primary focuses of Dunk and Egg as a series, that George is really using it as a showcase for the dreams and how they impact the Targaryens. I mean, if you look at the inciting events, the Mystery Knight and the Hedge Knight are both caused by dreams. Daron running away from his dream about Ashwood Meadow is what causes the whole thing. John the Fiddler, aka Daemon II, his dreams of his brothers dying and him and an egg hatching at White Walls and seeing Dunk is what causes him to launch the rebellion. Even Dunk in The Sworn Sword, he has quite a lot of very vivid dreams, particularly about people he knows dying in the sands and burying people, and those motivate him to do what he does in the rest of the story. So it's one of those things where it is a low concept story. It's a knight and his squire running around going to tourneys and fighting little battles, but it's also very high concept at getting at the heart of House Targaryen and the relationship to the supernatural. And I think that's really undersold, and I think that's something they should push way harder. And I hope that's one of the retcons they do.
Good said.
Yeah, it's like the central plot that we're following is relatively simple. But all the backdrop, all the motivation, all the symbolism, the dreams, this simple plot is a good vehicle for all this other stuff all these other stories that George wants to tell.
That's a great
and he hides it behind Dunk not understanding it. And that's one of the keys to it.
So one of this is probably one of our last points to make here, if not the last point. We have a thought I had was that the dragonfly is really important. Dunk, or very early on in the story, looks at the dragonfly and watches it and thinks about it. Leads him to think about dragons, and they don't. It's like, well, dragonflies don't even look like dragons, and then he thinks about this and that. Now that's super important because, of course, eventually Egg will name his firstborn Duncan, who will go on to be nicknamed Duncan the Small, Prince of Dragonflies. And that, of course, has to be set up here. I don't think they can wait for that. I think it's too important for the beginning. So that's really important to set up. It actually leads him to thinking about Sir Arlen and the Last Dragon, who had seen the Last Dragon and told him about it, which, of course, is important to bringing the dragons back and that whole conversation. So that refers as well to the end of the Hedge Knight, which talks about how could, my foot be more important than a prince's life, or how could, me, this Hedge Knight, how could, maybe I'm a character, the way you write here in our document, Joe, a character of great destiny.
He is. Very much so.
Yeah.
There have been people that have suggested that his boot does save the Targaryen dynasty, that it's his boot in a door at Summerhall that allows Rhaegar and Rhaella to escape the flames.
Oh.
That it's Dunk that saves the world, basically.
Nice.
By saving it from Egg and the dreams of Wildfire.
I could see that. Yeah, I mean, he did save. It was his heroics are certainly attested to there, and saving the children and the few people that lived. That, like, there's not many other options for what heroism he could have performed there, other than saving people. So. And those are the people who were saved. Yeah.
And quickly, as you talked about, also Dunk expressing misgivings early on in the Mystery Night, like, hey, Egg, dragons ain't cool. Like, maybe you shouldn't want those to come back. That could definitely be foreshadowing that Egg doesn't let Dunk know what he's planning to do at Summerhall. That's the reason it gets out of control. That Dunk goes like, what are you doing? Are you trying to climb onto a wildfire, or is he trying to shove Rhaella onto it to sacrifice Rhaegar? Much like Rhaego, like seeing Dany's pyre thing coming back into play, and Dunk, being a good person, leaps in, disrupts it, saves Rhaella and Rhaegar, but kills himself and Egg by mistake, and that could
and prevents the dragons from coming back.
Yes, that too.
It would have worked if it wasn't that for pesky Dunk,
that meddling kid. Yeah,
but ends up saving the world, and I think that's one of the primary things that George is probably struggling with Dunk and Egg as he goes into it. He hasn't really defined why Dunk, and he usually does. Like, is he a secret prince? Does he have a super secret bloodline somewhere? He loves to do that stuff, and I think that's why Dunk is such a character of destiny, is something that he's probably trying to weave in and having trouble with, because the rest of these stories sound good as they are. She-Wolves of Winterfell, a political like hodgepodge going on at Winterfell, sounds great. Like the village hero fighting between two sides at a village, cool. Being a sellsword, awesome. But like, he's really working on the dreams and why Dunk. I think that's the core of it.
Yeah,
and maybe that'll be his addition.
I like Dunk being closer to like Stannis. He's just alongside other characters of Destiny. And even if he is a character of Destiny himself, it's not because of some secret bloodline. It's just because he's a good person pursuing good achievements and got mixed up in it all. You know?
Yeah, I don't think Davos.
That's what I like.
Davos isn't a character of Destiny because of anything to do with him. He just, is surrounded. He surrounds himself with those people. And Dunk is the Davos to me.
Davos Dunkos.
You say that Davos is gonna end up being a Targaryen bastard. You just know.
I guess I could say I did not see his worth then.
Dunk Skywalker.
Another fun thing, we'll be seeing classics that are often present. Like, we'll hear The Bear and the Maiden Fair get sung. It's a song that's hundreds of years old at least, so we should get to hear that one out of place. Though Jenny of Old Stones will not have been written yet, nor The Reigns of Castamere. Those haven't been written yet, so those shouldn't be appearing. But the puppet show in The Hedge Knight includes Nymeria, so maybe we'll get another nod to Nymeria. We already got one in House of the Dragon, multiples in House of the Dragon, and now
we could get. It'd be interesting if we got more of the song or heard the song again, because if we're talking about T, she wrote that song for House of the Dragon. So
maybe that could still be,
or maybe she'll write another song for Dunk and Egg if she writes on that too.
That would be so cool,
actually. And everyone, tell Aziz to record the Nymeria song. We have the rest of the lyrics to the Nymeria song. Like, she sent it to us, and Aziz just needs to record a little clip of him singing it, and we could release it.
Yes,
but there's more lyrics that aren't released.
Yeah, the full song was written, but only a little bit of it made it on TV. So T gave us the rest of the lyrics.
Anyways, that's
just if you encourage me, I'm more likely
under
to do
him on it.
Did she do Damon's song as well? The one he sings.
Yeah, she did. But then David J. Peterson translated it, and then like they went back and forth. It was together. Right.
She wrote the actual the English lyrics. He
had to change some of them because it didn't work. Like the meter.
It was a collaborative effort, but it started with her essentially doing that. Yes.
T, release an album already.
The T album. That's awesome. Kirsty
Ooh,
Angel.
the T of House of the Dragon.
Yeah. T is for Targaryen.
House of T Dragon.
So Kirsty Angel says, saw a stream by the Interesting Nerd Club yesterday, an inflation theory on the crash of King's Landing. She wants us to watch and share some thoughts.
Yes.
Well, she says next week. Well, next week we're at Ice and Fire Con, so we can't share our thoughts next week, but I will check that out. I've never heard of the Interesting Nerd Club, so perhaps I will become a fan. I will take a look. We'll see what's up with that. I do like when the economics get brought into the stuff. It can be pretty darn important. A lot of times that's what's driving things. We shall see. Okay, let's have the answer to our trivia question. The question was, in the Blackfire Rebellions, Quentin Ball slew the sons of Lady Penrose, minus the youngest, whom he spared, apparently as a kindness to her. It's odd to call that a kindness, but hey. Someone in A Feast for Crows does nearly the same thing, slaying 7 out of 9 sons of one of this particular house. The answer to the question of who the warrior here is wielding Valyrian steel, it's Harris Harlaw, Sir Harris Harlaw, a knight amongst the Ironborn, which is rare, wielding the Valyrian steel blade at nightfall. And the house he did this to is House Grimm. He became the new Lord of Grimstone, or of Castle Grimm, and of course is soon to be ejected from that seat, as Euron has made him a bit of bait for the Reach there. And he took the bait, even though Victarion said, don't do it. He's like, yeah. So, that's that. Hope you all got that question right. If not, there'll be another one next time. So, Joe Magician, thanks for coming. This was an awesome discussion. We had a nice, lengthy chat. Your takes were excellent, as always. What is on tap for you? Where can people find you? Of course, your channel, Joe Magician, is the name of your YouTube channel, but we want to tell people what you're working on or anything else you want to shout out or say. Have at it.
Yeah, sure. So, I've been working on a video since October, on and off. It's about Boros Baratheon and what exactly happened and why he's being such a total dick at Storm's End, why he sends out Jace to die. Kind of a deep dive on the relationship between the Targaryens and the Baratheons and how it's much more than just him being a jerk. He is a jerk, but there's a lot more that was sort of missed by the Blacks in terms of what ended up happening there. So that's the next. I have that recorded and everything. There was this came up during a previous stream. I upgraded my computer and I accidentally wiped the hard drive I shouldn't have, and I lost everything. I lost thousands upon thousands of images I had amassed to make my videos, and also like the history and lore stuff. I lost all of that, so I've been trying to recreate it.
I feel bad that I laughed, but it's because you told me the context, which is not like, it wasn't like that accidental. It was like you clicked the button to do it.
Yeah, but
like,
I forgot it was an SSD, and as soon as you click it, it's gone. There's no recovery.
For
you
sure.
Can't get it back.
Awful. I had to say I feel bad for chuckling there, but it was because it was so like user error. Terrible.
Yeah, I'm dumb. Thanks. Yeah. So I've been trying to recover not that stuff, but recreate it, and so that video is coming. Obviously, the CK3 one I was talking about. Actually, let me look at my doc and see what the other video titles I've been working on are. I have a list of them. Hang on a second. Ideas. I know one of them is going to be about fan fiction and theory crafting, more of a meta discussion about the relationship between them, and especially in our fandom about how they sort of overlap a little bit.
I think there are some very interesting scholarship articles on the difference, on the gender difference between fan fiction, theory crafting, Reddit fan fiction, and Tumblr like fanfic. Yeah, there's a lot. Yep. There's a lot there, but yeah, it's very split gender wise, and like women are willing to like, fanfic. People write theories as if they aren't just writing really, really bad fan fiction, and that's what they're doing. So yeah, more power to you for that.
Have you been reading my outline?
I mean, it's just
Did you get access to my Google Drive? Like, what's going on here?
It's like, no, just own it. Just like, no, I'm writing a fix-it fanfic. Like, just say it then, if that's what you're doing.
they're writing fan fiction. Well, some people are writing fan fiction without writing dialogue. Basically.
Yeah, that's it. They're just doing easy fan fiction with no like real emotion or pain. Like they're not doing anything good. Anyway, sorry. Yeah, I'm with you though. I'm with you.
Another one is talking about how I have read The Winds of Winter, and I'm going to make a video about it. Nobody else has, just me. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about that one. I have seen it. I have read it.
Sure.
It's actually on the.
That's your fan fiction. Is that what this is? Is your fan fiction that you're sharing?
No, I have read the real thing. I have read The Winds of Winter.
It's just not The Winds of Winter by George R. Martin.
I forget where it is. Yeah. It's somewhere on these shelves behind me. Don't worry about it. It's going to be a whole video. And then obviously we're going to do a lot more of going to season 2 of House of the Dragon, talking more about the Blackwoods and Brackens like we talked about today. There's a reason I wrote like an entire page of notes about how I'm interested in that stuff. They're going to be coming up in a big way. Some more introductions to different characters, season 2 prep, that kind of stuff. That'll be coming. I'm not sure about streams when those will be coming back. Maybe in the future, maybe like in response to videos, but I have been enjoying having my Saturdays back.
When CK3 is more stable, we could do multiplayer when it's out of beta. Maybe.
Yeah,
that'll be fun.
CK3 is probably more of a possibility than just like picking a random topic and talking for 3 hours like I normally do. But yeah, and there's a whole bunch of I have a whole like George with Duncan Egg, and he has 12 stories he's gonna write. I have like 13 videos worth of titles that I want to make. So once the first one gets off the ground, probably the other ones will come shortly. That's usually how it goes with me.
Right
yeah,
on.
That makes sense.
Well, we look forward to that. Best wishes on your creative process and getting that done. Yeah, we know it's difficult.
Such an idiot.
It can be so difficult.
I suck.
It's that sounds really painful.
Destroyed my process.
To lose all that stuff, man.
No, I know.
That's a big
is.
ouch. Yeah.
It is.
Ouch.
At least you're starting it over again with more perspective and skill.
I mean,
there's a silver
and try to find some silver lining.
Yeah.
I'm labeling them better so I can find them.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
which characters in each picture, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, you'll have a better catalog, a better workflow after this. Like you will. It'll be better.
Right on.
So
It just hurts.
It
just hurts.
It does. It does. I understand. There's a reason I am like obsessive about my backups. I do have like backups on different hard drives. Not to, like because I'm terrified of that exact thing, like of me messing up and deleting all of our like stuff. I don't know. So yes.
Other episodes.
Don't be like me is the message.
Be like a Shay, not like Joe Magician.
Shay is always the best.
Until I have until all my hard drives fail, because I don't know what could happen. I think about it. I'm like, what could happen? Like, it could happen.
Some solar blast.
I just sent you down like a crazy, crazy head spiral. I can see it going. No, I need 4 backups now.
No,
the anxiety's off
different locations
the charts.
I have them backed up on like cloud and like, yeah. Anyways, you scare me with your talk.
All right.
Worst can happen.
Other episodes y'all can tune into from our back catalog that contain related topics to this one. Duncan Egg, of course. That's an obvious one. All for each of our podcasts on the short stories are 4 episodes in length and 1 to wrap it all up. We have a long series on the Blackfire Rebellions, of course. We have recent episodes on Aemon the Dragon Knight that come right before this era. We have the Summer Hall episodes. We have 2 of those. We have the Trouble with Turney's episode that Sean mentioned. That's an important one that relates to a lot of the stuff happening here. Our interview with George R. Martin is relevant. We had a lot of stuff that comes up that's relevant here as well about his process and some other specific details.
I think the Summer Hall episodes are extra good out of the ones that Aziz named. I think those particularly changed my perspective on Aerys.
Right on. Thanks for that. Yeah, I think I'm particularly proud of those as well. They're some of our older ones, but yeah. Those are maybe some of our best work of scripted episodes.
I mean, I just legitimately really think of Aerys very differently than I did before those episodes. Like, I'm much more tortured and like, I don't know.
Yeah, he witnessed it at a young age, and
it was like just
says
really
a lot about why wildfire was such an important thing to him.
Yeah. Anyway, so check those out if you haven't. That's my plug for out of. I mean, obviously, I think all of our episodes are great, but I felt like I learned more about the series after those. So
I rewatched our first Duncan Egg reread episode. I think there's a dozen or so of them all together, but there was a particular highlight moment right at the end of that episode, if you remember. is when I just got my kittens.
Oh.
Cora leapt to the camera as you turned
Yeah.
the stream off. It was like this perfect
Oh,
timing.
that's
Oh,
right. I
wow.
forgot about that. Oh,
That's
baby
great.
kitties. Kittens. Nice. Cool.
Well, thanks everyone for coming. Thanks in particular to Joe Magician for coming to hang out with us for a few hours today, giving us his great thoughts. Thanks to all you who attended live. That was a lot of fun hearing your comments. If you want to weigh in on any of the questions I asked during this episode and you didn't get a chance to do so live, you can join us on one of our many outlets on social media. We've got a Discord. We've got a Facebook group. You can hit us up on Twitter if you like. Any of those things work, or you can send us an email at westeroshistory@gmail.com. You can also sign up to be a supporter at patreon.com/history of Westeros, or sign up through Spotify. If you already have a Spotify subscription, you can just add a monthly subscription on top of that. There's a link in the description of every episode. Thanks as well to Joey, Jesse, and Bran for our intro and outro music and video stuff. Michael Klarfeld as well for the video intro and all his awesome maps. Thanks to our Bengineer for the audio work. And we will see you all in a couple of weeks for more. You know what to do. In the meantime, Valar Rereadus.